This is the best.
Do you hear me?
Of the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
And welcome to the middle of the week, and we are happy to be here. Glad you are as well. So much to do today, and just not enough time to do it in. Welcome to the program. Your phone calls in a moment at 855-242-7285. Let's get right to some headlines that may have broken since you last checked your Twitter feed. Bryce Brown becomes the fourth Auburn to enter the draft. Now, it's worth pointing out he is testing the waters. He has not hired an agent, so he is eligible to come back. He may not, but he certainly was one of the major reasons why Auburn at least got to the NCAA tournament and had such a great year. You got Brown, you got Harper, Wiley. Heron has already signed with an agent or will sign with an agent. If everyone comes back, but Heron, Auburn's going to be in good shape. But if all of these young men end up getting ticketed to the NBA, it will cause Bruce Pearl some headaches. But certainly a lot to talk about at Auburn, and that's not the only place where there is news today. Ole Miss claims Shea Patterson was not a victim of egregious behavior by the staff. This is certainly the allegations being made by his attorney, who's a familiar name in Ole Miss circles. Anyway, this is the case that ultimately will be decided by the NCAA, but and don't forget, Ole Miss has not heard yet from the NCAA Appeals Committee, so they are continuing to fight. Meanwhile, a year later, Miles Brennan back again in a starting battle, learning another new playbook with another new coordinator. So, same old, but will they get it right on the Bayou? Everyone's hoping. Gene Chizik, he knows a little bit about getting it right. He won the national championship at Auburn in 2010. He'll join us from Starkville. Ross Dellenger later on the quarterback battle on the Bayou. Michael Weiner, remember, this was a story we talked about with Stuart Mandel about attendance in college football on the decline. We'll talk to him later in the program. Well, why don't we get some phone calls going here at 855-242-7285? A lot has happened since we saw you last. Always enjoy hearing from you. So don't wait. Give us a ring now at 855-242-7285 on this mid-April day. Let's start with Ron in Frankfort, Kentucky. Always one of our favorite people. Ron, we've been thinking about you. We miss you. Hope you're progressing. Good afternoon.
Well, thank you, Paul. I'm not only not progressing, I was diagnosed with dementia on Monday.
Oh, my goodness.
So that was a little bit of a setback, and I underwent.
I'm really sorry to hear that.
I underwent about 4 hours of testing on Monday, and finally, thank God, I can drive my car locally, not on the interstate, but I can drive it locally. And during the interview process, they asked me if I did anything that might have contributed to a decline, and I told them the Paul Finebaum Show had a lot of crazy callers, and I thought over the years that they had infiltrated my mind, Paul. So,
Ron, I'm not laughing because I know you're going through a tough time, but I do appreciate your sense of humor, and I have checked out fairly well with my physician, which is amazing to me because that's my medical physician, not my psychiatrist.
Yeah, it was not the host. It was the callers who were a little bit crazy from time to time, but that's the reason I listen to the program, is that they got such odd takes on stuff and so forth.
Well,
I sure hope that Kentucky moves up a little bit on the football arena this year. I don't know. I think they're well coached, and they brought in some good players, but my God, in the Southeastern Conference, you have to be tremendously good even to be competitive.
Yeah, and that's my concern. We've had this conversation before, Ron, that Kentucky, it seems like it's a tortoise right now. It's getting better a little bit every year, and I think they need to speed that up because last year, it's a broken record to say this, but they missed a couple of major opportunities, especially with the Gators. That game has to be turned, and last year was a perfect opportunity to do that.
It was. Well, if you have any rich, beautiful women who are also good cooks, and I know that knocks a lot of them out, but a rich, beautiful, good cook, refer over to Frankfort, Kentucky, Paul. I would appreciate it.
Ron, I got 3 in mind. I'm sending them your way right now.
Thank you, Paul. It's always good to listen to you.
Be well, my friend. Really appreciate it. Johnny is up next in Orlando. Johnny, you there?
Hello?
Hello, Johnny.
Hi, is this Paul?
It is. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Paul. I enjoy your show. I think you're a gentleman and a scholar.
Thank you very much.
Paul, I wanted to call, but I just wanted to say something. It maybe put a little humor in people with dementia and Alzheimer's. As long as you forget that you forgot, you're okay.
That is pretty good.
But the reason I called, Paul, is I wanted to speak a little bit about the total SEC. Obviously, I'm a Florida fan and a Florida State fan. But, Paul, you know, people are talking down here in the places I go, and even on your show, I've noticed people calling in. It's always about Alabama. I was on hold yesterday for a half an hour, and they told me I'd be on the show, and I was on hold for a half an hour, and you took two Alabama people.
Well, Johnny, let me explain. Yesterday, well, I'm sorry about that, but yesterday was a little bit extraordinary. Alabama was at the White House, so we were paying a lot of attention to that.
Well, they should have been. But I mean, anytime a team gets to do that, privilege, that's an honor, you know, that which most people are not going to have or ever have. I don't mind that. It's just, Paul, sit back and look at what goes on. I'm saying this, Paul, because I like you. Okay.
Okay.
I'm saying this. You need to look at it because people are calling in. And it's starting to build a base of people being concerned. I know Alabama's successful in football, but you look at, just for example, my Gators, they're number one in baseball. The softball team's always been top in the top. The track and field, the men's indoor track and field won the track and field. But there's other schools in the SEC in which your program is very dedicated to. And you do a great job. But there's, you just need to look at it, Paul, and be a little more. And I know you got a war going on between Georgia and Alabama, and that's been going on a long time, and that can be good sometimes, but it shouldn't dominate the show. You should pretty much spread everything out in your show. And when things happen like what happened yesterday, the Alabama players going to the White House, that's something that you really bring forth the show. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just talking about the everyday normal show. And you do such a good job, Paul, at what you do. So I really hope that you will sit back and look and see what's going on, and you know, salvage this thing before it does get out of hand. I don't know when, if it ever would, but there's a lot of people.
Well, Johnny, let me
say
this. I deeply appreciate what you're saying, and I one thing I believe in is self-evaluation every day on this program, and that call means a lot. Thank you for sharing it.
All right, God bless you.
Thank you very much. Really good deal. So we talked about Kentucky, the Gators. Let's go to Zach in San Antonio. How are you, Zach?
Hey, Paul. First time, long time.
Thank you very much.
First off, Gig'em, we have no complaints in Aggieland. First time I can say that in years. Did you watch the Ole Miss spring game, Paul?
I caught some of it, yes.
There were about 30 people in those stands.
For some reason we lost you, but let me explain the situation at Ole Miss, at Arkansas, and at Auburn last weekend. It was a terrible weather day, and I know it's easy to be a Monday morning quarterback and say, well, they didn't have anybody in the stands, but it is a spring game, and there was threatening conditions across the south and southeast. Arkansas had sleet and snow. Auburn and Ole Miss had rain and thunderstorms. So that I think has much more to do with it than anything else. So, because I think there is a lot of optimism right now for Matt Luke at Ole Miss. We'll take a break. Gene Chizik will join us from Starkville. We'll get back to your phone calls at 855-242-7285. We are coming right back.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
We welcome all of you back who were away during our break. Let's head right to Starkville, and Gene Chizik joining us, the coach, taking in Mississippi State. Coach, thanks for the time. So you're on the ground. This is a team that a lot of people are excited about, with Joe Moorhead and, of course, Nick Fitzgerald coming back. Thanks for being here, and what have you seen so far?
Well, Paul, it's been a great 2 days, actually. A lot of confidence here, to be honest with you. I spent a lot of time in the last 2 days talking to both players and coaches, and I'll just start with the players. I think that TaxSlayer Bowl did wonders for this football team in terms of, kind of giving them some momentum into the offseason. They're very confident, and they've got a lot of returning starters, 7 or 8 on defense, 9 on offense. I spent some time with Nick Fitzgerald, and he's a very confident guy right now. I think this football team believes in itself. And then I think, again, I just got done having lunch with Joe Moorhead. I think he's a very confident coach. I think he believes that they can come in here with what they're doing, the staff that he's put together, take the nucleus that's here, because they've got a great nucleus to build on and build from, take this thing and run with it. So just the vibe I got yesterday, being at practice, talking with the players, I think there's a lot of confidence here in Starkville.
Coach, when you came back into this league, you had from Texas, you had in Iowa State, you had been here as an assistant. You knew the league. A lot of other people have followed similar paths. Joe Moorhead's coming from a completely different angle, being at Penn State, having been at Fordham. What did he ask you at lunch? I'm sure he was curious about this league.
Well, it was a very interesting lunch. Joe's a very unique guy, and I think that, success has really followed him wherever he's been. And that's why he's a confident guy. He's not a cocky guy. He's a very confident guy. And, when he became the head coach at Fordham, he went in there to a program that was, I think, 1-10. 2 years later, they won a championship. He won a couple of championships there before he went to Penn State and became the offensive coordinator. Obviously, the success they had there with under James Franklin was big. I just feel like, he doesn't care. There's going to be a lot of, and we talked about this, there's going to be a lot of, talk about, hey, look, you're not from here, recruiting in the South, all those things. Like he said, I think I can recruit anywhere. It's about relationships. It's about people. And he certainly feels confident in his coaching ability and his coaching skills. So he doesn't come in here with his hat in his hand. He feels very confident that he's the guy for the job, and he's ready to get this thing rolling.
You certainly are a defensive coach, and we've seen some pictures making their way around with you and the defensive line. Many believe it's certainly going to be among the very best, certainly the duo that you were hanging out with.
Right.
Tell us your assessment of the defense especially.
Well, you talk about confident guys, Paul. These guys are very confident. And again, I call these guys on the defensive line the great erasers. When you look at great defenses, you're looking typically at things that start up front at the point of attack, and you have some real guys up there, and they can erase the mistakes of all the people that are behind them by just simply how they play. And so yesterday we talked a lot with Jeffrey Simmons. We talked a lot with Montez Sweat, who came into the league last year. Nobody really knew who he was, and all of a sudden he just led the league in sacks and was a first-team All-SEC guy. And, of course, Jeffrey Simmons, a 5-star guy coming out of high school, and he has torn it up in this league. I can't remember, Paul, the last time there's been 2 coaches poll first-team All-SEC guys on one defensive line that have both returned together. Usually you get one guy that comes out or 2 guys that comes out. Both of these guys come back, and they were adamant about coming back because they really have a great vision for what this looks like. They're very confident with their defense. I watched them practice yesterday. They got talent on the field. Dan Mullen did not leave the cupboards bare here. You got big, long corners on the perimeter. Mark McLaurin, number 41, the safety, had 3 picks against Lamar Jackson in the Tax Slayer Bowl, tied for the lead in the SEC in interceptions. And you got those guys up front that can really change the line of scrimmage. So I think defensively, Bob Shoop's going to come in here. He's got the bases loaded, so to speak, but they're all confident and they're ready to go.
Talking to Coach Chizik in Starkville, we've discussed the head coach, obviously, the defense. Everyone wants to know about Nick Fitzgerald. Give us your read on what you've seen from him so far and what you expect.
Really interesting, Paul. I had a great conversation with him yesterday. This is a confident guy. And, everyone obviously is going to say, well, where is he in the rehab with his ankle and things of that nature? They're smart about how they're proceeding. They have to be very judicious on exactly how fast they're going to progress him. Went out to practice yesterday. He's throwing 7-on-7. They're not doing anything to put him in harm's way where somebody could roll or fall into his ankle. They feel like he's ahead of schedule. He certainly feels like he's ahead of schedule in terms of where his ankle is. And when you have those kind of gruesome injuries like we saw, a lot of those things, Paul, become just a mental game with the player in terms of how fast they come back. And he is ahead of the curve right now. He's saying all the right things, but he's stepping into his throws. You don't really see any noticeable limp or anything. When you watch him, he feels 100% confident that he will be ready to go come fall camp. They're being smart the way they treat it right now. And quite frankly, talking to Joe today, Joe feels really good in terms of his progression and learning this offense. He feels like Nick is a cerebral guy, that he can handle all of the new concepts that he's bringing to the table, and that he's thrown the ball, all the circumstances as they are, he's thrown the ball well. So I think there's a lot of hope, and he knows what Nick can do. He talked today about he knows what Nick can do with the ball in his hands, running the football. They're trying to work on challenging the ball vertically down the field, and they'll do their easy access throws as well. But I think that's a real point of emphasis on throwing the ball down the field. That's what he was big at Penn State on, and that's why they had so much success there.
Before you go, and these are always speculative questions about it, where a team fits in the SEC West, because we know what the top looks like. But after Alabama, maybe Auburn, many expect Mississippi State to be right in there. You're just guessing now, but you know more than we do. From what you've seen of this team and what you know of the league, how do you think they're going to project in the fall?
Yeah, that's a great question, Paul. And again, they've got the bases are loaded. Like I said, they've got the players in place. There's so many variables when there's a new staff. How fast is the buy-in factor? Right now, they're undefeated, so the buy-in factor is extremely high. What happens in the second game of the year and the third game of the year if they stumble and get beat by 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns? How does the team respond to those type scenarios? So there's a lot of variables. But I will say this. If offensively they catch on to the scheme that Joe Moorhead brings in here, if Nick Fitzgerald becomes as healthy 100% by the time kickoff opens September 1st, if all those things fall into place, I think you're looking at a potentially dangerous team, because defensively they've got real dudes out here. I watched them practice yesterday. They've got some real cats. If all of those things fall into place, I think you're looking at somebody that can challenge and make a lot of people in the West nervous. If those things don't fall into place necessarily, if Nick gets banged up in a scrimmage or you don't know how he's going to respond with his injury, there's so many variables like that you don't know. But the table is set. And I can tell you, if I'm a team in the SEC West and this thing gets put together and it kind of starts getting some momentum with Joe Moorhead and kind of the new offensive scheme that he's bringing in, and the confidence this team is bringing from last year, they're going to have their hands full. And so I think that, it's a wait and see. Like I said, there's a lot of variables, but this could be a dangerous team.
Spring game is a week from Saturday. Coach, before you go, we troll for pictures all over the place, and we found one from Starkville where this is what, Danny Brams and you? I can't see.
Well, Brams is here. We were supposed to eat lunch together, but Brams ate all our food, Paul. So Joe and I just starved and just talked. That's all we could do and drink iced tea because Brams ate everything.
Yeah, listen, we understand that. We'll send him back home. He's got work tomorrow to do.
Absolutely.
Coach,
great to be on with you guys.
Thank you very much. What a pleasure. Gene Chizik joining us from Starkville. Danny Bram. There is a weight limit on the plane. I've flown out of Columbus, Mississippi before. We are up against a break. More of your phone calls at 855-242-7285. Back after this.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
You're not worth a flip.
Next, you're holding up the line, ma'am.
What did you say?
You're next in line for the water slide, ma'am. Feet forward and enjoy the ride.
Okay, dearie, this does look fun. Whee-oh, you melted me. I've melted.
The Wicked Witch of the West on a water slide? Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
See what you've done. Oh!
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Welcome back to the program. Much more to come as we roll on a Wednesday. Couldn't remember what day it was. How about Alicia in Augusta? How are you, Alicia?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful today. I just wanted to share one little tidbit with you. My father coached Kenny Stabler back in the early 60s, he was the one who named Kenny Stabler the Snake.
Did he really? Why?
Yes, he sure did. Denzel Hollis, because he said that he ran across the football field like a snake very fast. And my dad passed away a few years ago of Alzheimer's, but I graduated from Bama, and I went to Augusta, Georgia, just retired from teaching school 30 years. And I enjoy your show, and I watch it very often.
Thank you.
And now that I'm retired from teaching school, I can watch your show more often. And I just want to thank you so much for taking my call today, and just want to let you know how much respect I have for you and your show. And I just want to thank you so very much.
Well, Alicia, first of all, thanks for sharing the information about your dad. That must have been quite a memory coaching someone like Kenny Stabler. We appreciate that. Congratulations on your career in teaching, and we're glad to have you here.
Oh, well, thank you, and I'm still a Bama fan and always will be. Everybody in my family graduated from Bama, except my brother. He graduated from the Naval Academy at Annapolis. But we're all Bama fans and go to many of the games as often as we can. And I marched in the band at University of Alabama during the Dr. Ferguson days, and I was there during the Bear Bryant days as well. But again, I just want to thank you so much, and I'll bring in a call sometime soon during the football season, okay? And thank you again.
Alicia, thank you very much. So good to hear from you. Really, really cool call. How about Randy is in Georgia? Randy, welcome to our program, and good afternoon.
Well, good afternoon, Paul. Sounds like it's going to be another fun show.
Always.
Hey, just a couple things. First of all, I like Chizik a lot better in the booth than I do on the field. I think he's pretty darn good. I really do.
He's very good. I worked with him the night of the national championship game, and he's fantastic.
Yeah, he's smart. I've seen him on different shows, and he always has some nice. He's smart. Is the way he analyzes the games? He always makes some good points. So I got to give that to him. Here's why I called. It just seems like you can't go a day where you either get a phone call or somebody calls up and says, I want the show back the way it used to be, or you get a phone call that says there's too much conversation about Alabama. Now, being a dog, I'll tell you that, yeah, I get tired of hearing about Alabama, but guess what? Alabama's at the top of the conference. They win the national championship every other year. So who are you going to talk about? And as far as other sports, that's great. Georgia does some nice things in other sports too, but this is the SEC, and football is king. So until we win ourselves a little more, and that includes Florida, and that includes Tennessee and whatnot, you're going to hear more about Alabama. You're going to hear more about the West. That's just the way.
Well, you know, Randy, listen. I mean, there are a lot of really smart people plan this show out every day, and there's only so much you can plan. Some of it is, if not a lot of it, is unpredictable. And one thing we try to do is go with the flow. There aren't any other 4-hour programs that are unscripted. Most of them are pretty heavily produced, and so I get it. I'd like to hear about everyone at different times, but let's be honest. There's some things we don't want to just force a conversation to talk about X school when there's nothing to talk about.
Yeah, and know this too. And Johnny really should know this. There isn't a Georgia fan out there that is more concerned about Alabama than they are Florida.
Exactly.
They're still the number one rival. They're still the one that if we had to choose one win a year, that's the win we'll take.
Absolutely.
Every time. So, anyway, enjoy the show. I think it's
Thank you very much. Really do appreciate that call. That was fantastic. Great to hear from you. Johari is in Texas. You're on the air. Go right ahead.
Hey, Paul.
Hi there.
I just wanted to know, with everything Alabama did this past season coming up, I would like to know would they be back to where they are with all the people that they lost and all the people that Georgia has coming back. Do you think we can see that situation play out again? Because Georgia had the game.
Yeah, but Johari, remember something about Georgia. They've lost a lot of key people as well.
Correct, but they had, I think, a few people coming back on offense that was some top key players, and they had a good defense that was coming back. What Alabama did, they did one thing right in the national championship. That one play that cost Georgia the game. Georgia dominated the game from start to finish.
Well, that's not exactly true. Georgia dominated the first half, but don't forget Alabama came from behind and gnawed at the lead, and then seemingly had the game won. I mean, Alabama had nobody remembers this, but Alabama had a chip shot field goal to win the game in regulation, and they blew it. So that game, would it have been as exciting to talk about? No, but Alabama took control of the game, and then they let it get away, and then they held on. So I think we focused too much on one play. If Alabama's field goal kicker had connected, we would have never heard about 2nd and 26.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that I looked at in the game is that, okay, even to the last play that Alabama won it on, you go back to, I think it was the play right before that when they got the sack.
Oh, sure.
Georgia got the sack, and they end up in that position. I think Georgia had a misblown assignment somewhere down the line. I think that play should never happen. So my question once again is, do you think Bama and Georgia will be back in this position?
I think there's a realistic chance, and this is the reason why, Johari, even though both are replacing a lot of key players, especially on defense on Alabama, Georgia's replacing the top two running backs, two of their best defensive players. They both have recruited at the highest level. Alabama and Georgia have recruited better than anyone else the last 2 or 3 years. So that's probably the reason. They also have something else unique. Neither really has what I would call a challenging non-conference game, and that can undo you a little bit. Remember, Georgia last year had to beat Notre Dame. Alabama had to beat Florida State. Both were considered toss-up games. This year, Alabama plays Louisville, which is a shell of itself, and Georgia's only big non-conference game, I think, is Georgia Tech. So things are much easier, I believe, for both schools next year. Thank you for the call. Appreciate it. Let's move on. Francis is in Tennessee, and you are on the air. Go right ahead, Francis.
Hey, Mr. Finebaum. How you doing?
We are doing great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I watch your show every day when I come in from work every day. It's hard to get through to you, but I finally got through to you today, so I'm kind of breakdancing right now.
I'm really glad you made it. Well, that is fantastic that you got on.
Well, anyway, I'm a big time Gators fan, and I'm wondering what's your opinion on Dan Mullen reaching the status of Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer there in Gainesville.
I think it's really good. To me, Dan Mullen has the experience that you need. Will Muschamp, I think, were he to go to Florida today, he'd be better prepared. I just don't think he was quite ready for the challenge. And on top of that, I think Mullen is not having to deal with the expectations of following Urban Meyer. It's much easier. So I think he also has the advantage of having already been at Florida and won a championship. So I think he is ideally suited to lead the Gators back.
I really hope so, because we've been down for a couple of years, and I'm really hoping that we can get back to some kind of dominance there in Gainesville.
Thank you very much for the call. We are up against a break, a couple of more minutes here in this first hour. More of your phone calls at 855-242-7285, 855-242-7285. More to come on a Wednesday.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Hey, Ed. Good afternoon.
Hi, Paul.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the call. Welcome.
Yes, Paul, I enjoy your show. Watching on television now, I don't see your face. The other two guys are talking, but anyways, I'm a devout Alabama fan, which doesn't concern what I'm going to talk to you about. Anyway, listen.
I'll tell you what, Ed. Disregard the actual disregard the television and just talk to us. Okay, there's a delay.
You need to listen to this. My sister, she was a devout Auburn Tiger fan, and before she passed away with COPD, we wanted to take her to see the Auburn Tiger game, and I had to roll her in a wheelchair. I'm sorry.
Ed, take your time.
Okay. Everyone talks about Alabama. Alabama's great, okay? They are good. And Auburn, she loved the Auburn Tigers. She wanted to go, before she died, from COPD to watch the Auburn Tigers play, and we couldn't get her there in a wheelchair. And her last request, Paul, she wanted everybody to wear Auburn Tiger shirts to her funeral. She was cremated.
Oh, my goodness.
And, okay, Paul, you got to get your tissues out.
That's okay.
That was my baby sister. And you talk about Alabama, Auburn, she loved Auburn. She would, when I'd call her, she'd say, "Hey, Elwa." She wouldn't call me Edward. She would call me Elwa since she was a baby girl. I was her big brother. We have other brothers, but that are older than me, but she'd always call me and say, "Hey, big brother, how are you doing?" And I say, "Roll Tide." She'd say, She'd say, "Oh, no, War Eagle." I said, "Okay, whatever you want to say." But to go back, she loved the Auburn Tigers. She did. And we wanted to take her to that game, but we couldn't. But we did all Alabama fans in my family wore Auburn T-shirts to her funeral. And, Paul, I enjoy your show, and I just wanted to say Alabama is good, but she loved Auburn. And I can't say anymore. I'm sorry.
Ed, thank you very much. We do appreciate it.
Paul.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you.
I know it wasn't easy, but we really appreciated that very much. Wow, that's an amazing call. Millie is up next.
Well, hi, Paul. How are you guys doing today? I loved your show yesterday. It was really a cool one, funny.
Thank you, Millie.
And I'm sorry for Ed's problem that he had that I just heard. That was a terrible situation to lose your younger siblings. I've lost a sister, too, and I know just how bad it is. And anyway, I enjoyed that part that you had from Washington, D.C. I'm surprised you weren't there.
Well, I needed to be here, Millie.
Yeah, you do, but you're just as good of a correspondent as anybody else is.
No. Jim is our new national political correspondent.
Well, he's nothing compared to you. Absolutely nothing compared to you, okay? Anyway, I know I'm not going to be able to watch your show too much today. you're only on for an hour, and so it's nice to be able to talk to you now. And at 3 o'clock, I'll just do some housework or something. So anyway, you guys take it easy, okay? And Randy and John, take it easy today, okay? You guys, and I know you guys are going to be very, very busy, so I guess I'll talk to you sometime. I'm on jury duty from May to August.
Hold on a second, Millie. So you will actually sit on a jury?
Yeah, I'm going to be on jury duty from the 1st of May until the last of August.
Now, Millie, let me ask you a question or two, because these are questions you will be asked in terms of prejudices or being prejudicial. Do you feel like you could? I've been on jury duty before, so this is from experience. Do you feel like you can keep an open mind on a case?
Yeah, as long as I don't find out all about it. That's why I'm starting not to read newspapers and things.
Well, no, Millie, you don't. You only have to do that. You only have to do that about the specific case. Once the trial begins, they will encourage you not to keep up within the media, but you're free to keep up with the news. But they'll ask you. If in terms of it depends on what the case it is. Let's say it's a domestic abuse case. They'll ask you about past history in that regard. If it's a civil suit, they'll ask you your feeling on wealthier people versus less fortunate. So you'll just be prepared for that, okay?
Yeah, I'm going to try to, and I'm a pretty even person. I don't.
If it's a murder case, they'll ask you your feelings on gun control.
Penalty?
Yeah, the death penalty.
Yeah.
Is Missouri is Missouri a death penalty state?
Yes, it is.
So they will definitely ask you that, Millie. So.
Do you have that problem in Charlotte? Are you guys a death state too?
I really I can't tell you. I really pay much attention to what they do here.
Yeah,
I'm just visiting the city. I'm not learning too much.
Visiting. You're not visiting the city.
I'm renting right now. I'm not buying.
Oh, you're renting. Oh, okay. Well, your wife has such a prestigious job there, so I guess you are there for the duration.
As long as she wants to be here, I'll be here. I do whatever she tells me to do.
Well, it's so nice to be able to talk to you today, and I know you're going to be going on.
Well, thank you, Millie. Yes. Thank you very much. By the way, Millie mentioned that there is a baseball game coming up, but we are not done yet. We will move over to the radio side. You can also get it on the ESPN app, satellite, and your local affiliate. A couple of guests to come up.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Put a little cherry on the top.
Bring your own guts. This is the best.
Do you hear me?
Of the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
We welcome you back. Glad you're here, and you can join the show at 855-242-7285. 855-242-7285, and John Hayes with me here. John, it's been a fairly quiet day. It's been fairly quiet spring, really.
It has. And that's why I wanted to talk to Ross Dellenger, the Baton Rouge Advocate, today, Paul. I haven't heard anything about the LSU quarterback situation. We've talked a lot about the head coach, Ed Orgeron, the low expectations down there in Baton Rouge. But quarterback's been an issue on the Bayou for as long as I've been covering the conference, for the last 5 years. And it seems to still be an issue. I don't know who the guy is going to be. Have you heard any rumblings down there in Baton Rouge about who can play quarterback?
No, I haven't. It's incredibly quiet, and it's the biggest issue going. And I think if they don't solve the problem, guess what? They could be in for a long year.
You're right. And Ed Orgeron, if he's going to have a long, sustainable career in Baton Rouge, he's got to get somebody under center. Dave Aranda, the fact that he stuck around, Paul, and even through the transitional period there, it's a big plus for Ed Orgeron because he can kind of look on the defensive side of the football and say, let's focus on offense. Aranda's going to handle things for me on defense, but I still don't know what to expect. You lose Matt Canada, and there's a new identity in Baton Rouge all over again. And we're sitting here, Paul, Gene Chizik comes on the show, and we're talking about Mississippi State. Are they a contender in the West? What happened to LSU? I don't know.
Let's get back to the phones at 855-242-7285, and a lot of controversy yesterday over the Daniel Carlson comments, so we'll get into that as well. How about Brandon up next? What do you say, Brandon?
Hey, man, how you doing today?
We are doing great. Thank you.
I wanted to kind of briefly touch on the Daniel Carlson comment, but first and foremost, I wanted to say to Ed, I'm sorry about your loss, and I want to offer him my condolences before I start this conversation.
Thank you very much.
I'm just kind of thrown by, and I went back and read some stats online dealing with Auburn's record over the past 10 years and Alabama's as far as win totals. And, the proof is in the pudding, Paul. When you come out and you flat out say, yeah, we'll take that. We're state champs. And it just seems like Auburn settles for the Georgia game and the Alabama game, and they're never going to be on a national stage. Like, if you look at their win total, Alabama's almost doubled their win total over a 10-year period. There's no consistency. And my question to you really to kind of start this is, don't you think signing a 7-year deal with Gus Malzahn was a little absurd?
I think it was done for this reason. It was done as a defense mechanism to keep him from going to Arkansas, and I think the university president said, you know what, if we lose him, where do we go? I didn't think the coaching pool, I don't know what you think, John, was all that great last year.
No, it wasn't. Absolutely not. And you talk about hitting the nail right on the head. There was a few weeks there, Paul, where Gus Malzahn was non-committal to staying at Auburn. It wasn't necessarily public-facing, but if you asked him straightforwardly, are you going to be here at Auburn next season while that Arkansas job was open? I don't think you were going to get a straight yes.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it had to do with Malzahn's a really smart guy, and he could feel what we felt when we were down there. He wasn't very popular.
No.
And after the LSU game, remember the school paper called on him to be fired. Many others did as well. We did the show from Auburn that Friday before the Georgia game, and my sense was that had he lost that game, he was very close to being fired. So the university president I think he made a good decision. We act like he gave him $49 million to stay. That's over 7 years, and the university president's thinking, you know what, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But what if I had to go through a coaching search, and where was I going to go? And I think if Auburn is having a debate about Gus Malzahn in 2 years, then it was short-sighted. But if he can steady the waters, which most people believe he will, then it was a good call. Those things are never easy. I'm not taking the side of the university president. Anyone who's listening knows me better than that. But unless you have a good plan, and really, I heard Will Muschamp's on their list, but I'm not sure Muschamp would have taken the job. No,
and I wouldn't have if I was Will Muschamp. He's got something brewing down there in Columbia.
I was with him on the Friday before the final game, the Iron Bowl, and I said that to him, something about the ring, and he acted like he hadn't heard, even though he had. And my sense was he would not have left, so that they would have been in a tough spot. Tricia is in Georgia. You're on the air. Go right ahead.
Hey, Paul. I love your show. I watch it every day.
Thank you.
Most of the time, I record it.
Oh, wow!
Because I'm not always home to watch it. But
and by the way, let me offer this advice. That is actually the best thing to do. Just do the what's it called? You put it on your automatic record. every day.
Use your DVR.
Right. Yeah,
just set the series record every day. That way, every time Jim from Tuscaloosa calls in, you just hit the fast forward button and then wait until the end of his call and start right back up again.
Well, that's exactly what I want to talk to you about, because yesterday I was watching, and being a Alabama grad and huge Alabama fan, I was just so proud that my team was at the White House, and all the young men were dressed so nice, and they just seemed very respectful. And I thought Trump was, he tried to make it personal by, calling the different players' names, and I just thought it was was great, and I just was so proud. And
I think that's the most fun I've seen Trump have in a long time.
Well, he loves college football.
Yeah. I mean, and him saying, you know, he was at the game and all that, and then I forgot the man's name that came on that kind of critiqued, you know, how everything went on.
Philip Stutz.
Philip Stutz, yes. So, I mean, it was just positive. And then Jim calls, and to be honest, every time he comes on, I just fast forward. It's just, I don't know. He lives in Tuscaloosa, so I'm assuming he must be an Alabama fan. I don't know, but never, ever, and I watch the show every day, have I ever heard him call and talk about football? And yesterday,
let me say this about Jim. He grew up an Alabama fan. His family are all Alabama fans. Jim just has other interests these days. He's very politically inclined, and I think sports is just not a big part of his repertoire anymore.
He quit talking ball.
Your show is a sports show.
Well,
Why doesn't he call into some political show? And like yesterday, he didn't say a word. I mean, he's a huge Trump fan, which I am too.
Yeah,
but he didn't say, wow, my president that I've, you know, talked about and supported, and, you know, he's the first one on your show to ever say he was for Trump and all this. Never mentioned Trump, never mentioned the University of Alabama, never mentioned football. All he could talk about was that this Philip Stutz was your
again, Jim,
person in Washington instead of him, which was ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a. What do you think, John?
Jim called us and said he was off the Trump train.
Yeah,
said he was down on Trump. Tricia,
but why do y'all allow him to come on and belittle everybody and be so negative and never talk about football? I mean, I just don't understand that. That's fine. You know, like Daryl, he kind of gets, you know, out in left field, but at least he's talking about his team. And all the people that call and they're, you know, talking about sports, Jim never talks about sports. So why don't y'all say, you know, if you're not going to talk about sports and all you're going to do is be negative when you call, then don't call, or put out some kind of survey and say, how many people that watch the Paul Finebaum show like to hear negative Ned, you know, and all he does is talk about what he doesn't like. He doesn't like Paul. He doesn't like, you know, the callers. Everything about him is just negative, and I don't like that, and so that's why I record the show, so I can be sure and fast forward through him. So, but anyway, I love the show. It is the highlight of my day, and sometimes I'm watching it at 10 o'clock at night. So thank you for having such a great show and for letting me call.
Thank you very much. Really great to hear from you. And we're going to head to the break right now. More guests to come. Your phone calls at 855-242-7285. It is Wednesday, and we're back.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Welcome back to our program, and we're glad you are here. Jake is up next. What do you say, Jake?
Hey, not too much, Paul. I was just calling in about the woman that just called in earlier.
Yes.
Hey, Jim, to me, Jim is one of the highlights of the show. I mean, he's a long-term caller. He's been calling in for years. He always brings a little bit of excitement to the show, and I think people are losing sight of that.
Well, listen, ultimately the person to blame for anyone who gets on the air here is me. I mean, I'm not trying to compare myself to a symphony conductor, but a lot of it is you're just kind of looking down in a split second and making a gut call on the person that you think will help the flow of the show go the best.
Hey, I'm telling you, Paul, and that's you know, I'm from Alabama, and hey, That's what made you, because you don't never turn them down. You'll take them blind, crippled, and crazy any day of the week.
That is true.
And that's a fact right there. Well, I was just going to call in and tell Jim, hey, I mean, who else can hit better than Ted Williams? I mean, that's great stuff right there.
Thank you very much for the call. It's funny. I was on another show today, John. Appreciate the call, Jake, in Alabama, and the subject happened to be legend. I was on a political show there, and the host of the show was decrying legend, and that's for another debate, another conversation. But my argument was that this show is built on callers, and I frankly think the overwhelming majority of radio talk show hosts think they're better than the callers. They think
it's a one-way relationship.
They don't need the callers.
That's right.
I feel like we do need the callers, and that's why I went on this program, even though I don't think I'd ever do it again, defending legend. But did legend get carried away? Yeah, maybe he did.
He got excited.
He was proud of the fact that he was on a program.
Braggadocious, proud.
And the host of this show was just so snarky about it and so elitist about it and so arrogant about that this guy misrepresented. Like talk show, like hosts of shows don't misrepresent things far more important than whether a caller to the Finebaum show is actually a co-host of a program that everyone knows is a sponsored element by a race course.
Absolutely, you're supposed to relate, Paul, to the blue collar fan, the blue collar worker, somebody who's hanging in their truck on a Wednesday afternoon listening to the show. You got to relate to that person. You're not supposed to act like you're better than that person. No one wants to be talked down to.
But this guy was clearly talking down to his callers because he is the all-knowing host of a show. And he knows more than anyone else. And by the way, he's not alone. There's nothing unique about this guy except that he happened to be the one who got legend fired. And it just really irritated me. And I came away, and I'm not one of these guys that rail against the media because I'm part of the media, and I've been part of every aspect of the media throughout my career. And I've seen the good and the bad from the print side, from the digital side, from the radio and the television side. But when people behind the microphone or behind the camera start thinking that they're better than everyone else because they're on, and they better realize that the people at home are what makes this medium work and operate.
That's right. And Paul, you've had every opportunity to kick these callers to the curb. I've been in meetings where people have said, we don't want those folks calling the show anymore. They're bad for the show. I've been there, and you've stood up for them every single time.
And listen, I'm not making threats, but if people don't want me to do that, I'll find somewhere that they will. That's what makes this so unique. I've done shows where you don't ever talk to anyone, and at some point, I mean, there's only so many people you can talk to that are interesting, and quite frankly, not that many analysts I find very interesting. Some are great, some aren't.
Wouldn't it become nauseating to hear yourself speak for 4 hours straight?
Yeah. And by the way, some people do it really well. Colin Cowherd, I think, is one of the best. He has a method to how he does it. There are political talk show hosts who don't rely on calls. I've had people criticize me saying that guy's a clown. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he couldn't do it. I've never said I could. To me, the key to this is the interaction, not me pontificating to you for 3 hours or 4 hours on how much I know. I don't ever claim to know very much, but I always leave here better informed than when I came, thanks to people that call in the show. Justin is in Cleveland, and you're on the air.
Paul, I wrote a song for you today. Called "Can You Please Crawl Out Your Window" by Bob Dylan. You ever heard that one?
Yeah, I remember Dylan singing a song similar to that years ago.
Yeah, and if you're not a Dylan guy, maybe you're a fan of the Doors.
Oh,
they wrote a little tune called "The Cars Hiss By My Window."
You're a big Doors guy, aren't you, Paul?
I do like Jim Morrison. I sure do.
Well, check that one out, Paul.
Yeah, I'm actually I'm probably a bigger Dylan fan than I am a Doors fan. But
well, I mean, maybe you like Reverend and the Makers. They kept it simple. Open your window. Check that one out.
Yeah,
Love you, Paul.
that was. Thank you very much. That was actually pre me listening to. I think that was a mid '60s song. I became more of a Dylan fan later. Now that was the Doors era, though. I mean, the Doors are still pretty big today. I mean, in terms of people going back in time, they're a very influential group. And I remember that song. Does that guy feel better about himself that he made fun of? Didn't Mark do that same take yesterday?
He did.
Throws out the Winder.
There it is. Winder licking good. Is that KFC's new motto?
Anyway, if you would like to call in, you don't have to. We won't make you. 855-242-7285. As you can tell, it's happy hour here on the Finebaum Show. Coach is up next.
Hey, Paul. How are you today?
We are doing fantastic. Thank you.
Great. I got a Tennessee football question I'd like to ask you, but first I want to just kind of mention the show to me, and I've listened for years, and I want to tell your listeners now that they can't view it because of the Tennessee baseball game being on, that it's not only informative, but it's entertaining. And that's all, that's at the end of the day, that's kind of what I think you guys have always shot for. You're not just, we can talk about a lot of different things, whether it be sports or non-sports related. I mean, it brought me back the other day just talking about Shoney's. That was the first place I ever ate growing up. That's the only restaurant we had in town.
I mean, to me, Coach, I'm always careful when I talk because I may end up biting the hand that feeds me. But you have to be entertained. I mean, this is not a 30-minute show where it's set, you do this, you do that, and then you're off the air. I mean, this is a long program that a lot of things happen, and many of them are impromptu. And
right, and I think that's great that it's not scripted. That's what I think has made the show and has been one of your highlights throughout your career doing it this way. And I know even in a lot of coaching friends that I have, there's a lot of coaches that listen and watch the show when they can.
I'm always that's interesting. I'm always amazed when I run into people and they kind of whisper, "Hey, by the way, I do watch, I do listen."
Oh, it's you would be amazed at how many and I'm no longer in coaching, but my friends that still are. Try to listen on a daily basis when they're not in season.
No, there was a time, Coach. It was when I was in Birmingham on radio that the coach did not like me, and that could have gone for any number of coaches at Alabama. But there was one guy who would, he would sit in his office with the earphones on because he didn't want anybody to hear him, and he knew that everyone knew what he was doing, by the way. But he said, I had to listen. I mean, it was just it was my way of finding out what was really going on.
Something tells me Butch Jones did the same thing.
It is. It's the pulse of a lot of things in the SEC. But I thoroughly enjoy it, as always. Listened for years and watched, and I really enjoy it. But I have a Tennessee football question.
Sure.
I listened to your interview the other day with Marcus, and I think he pretty much said everything, but Tennessee's going to win more football games than LSU this year.
Yeah, I saw Marcus. I said, I don't know what your future looks like, Marcus, but you got a job in Tennessee for life after that interview.
Oh, I'm telling you. But let me ask. I don't know anything about. He mentioned that they could obviously win 7 or 8 games, and I agreed, except for one game I don't know anything about. And that's the first game, West Virginia. Can you kind of enlighten us of what you know? I'm going to let John expound on that, but let's start with Will Greer. I mean, to me, that's a pretty well-oiled machine that Tennessee's facing in that first game.
West Virginia's going to be favored by at least 10 points. It's a tough game for Tennessee to open up in Jeremy Pruitt's first game. That's something they've got going for them. The fact that it is Pruitt's first game as Tennessee head coach. Knoxville is not far from Charlotte, North Carolina, so there could be a lot of vol orange in Bank of America Stadium. If that happens, maybe there'll be an upset. But, Paul, don't get me wrong. And Marcus's report from Knoxville was strong. I think there is momentum building there. Philip Fulmer, a legend of the past, coming back to be the athletic director. But for some reason, I find it that everyone's sweeping under the rug that Tennessee went 0-8 in the SEC last season. That is abysmal. You can't just turn it around in 1 year after falling flat on your face.
Totally agree, and I really
no.
agree
Listen, Marcus is like a brother to me, but he must have gone to the dentist beforehand and still been under the influence of some laughing gas.
Well, he's, that's what happens when you lose 54 pounds. And to mention golf, you were talking about golf weather and how you wouldn't play in New Jersey right now. I've always used my age as a barometer of when I'm going to play. Basically, I'm in my late 50s now, so I don't play anything under my age.
That's good. By the way, I like that.
That's pretty much my theory in golf these days. So, but hey, I thoroughly enjoy the show, and I think to your listeners that are still listening, the entertainment and information standpoint behind the show is what keeps people watching and listening, and I really enjoy it.
Thank you so much. What a great call. We really appreciate it. We are going to take a short break. In our next Winder, we're going to talk about LSU football and more of your phone calls at 855-242-7285.
Kudos out the window.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
You're not worth a flip.
Everyone in the neighborhood knew about Bobby. Bobby, the basketball boy, they called him. Bobby wanted to go pro someday, so he was always out in the driveway shooting hoops. But one day, his mom came out and told him,
"Hey, your wife wants you to take out the trash?"
His mom was visiting, and Bobby was a grown man. He had kind of missed his window. Plus, no one had ever seen him actually make a basket. But on the other hand, Bobby had heard how Geico could save him money on car insurance, so he switched and saved. So it was all good.
We welcome you back. We started the program off with a headline about the future of LSU, especially at the quarterback position. I use all of that as a preamble to welcome in Ross Dellenger, who covers the Tigers. Ross, it's been too long. I hope all is well. We've seen the FPI projections. We've heard conversation about quarterbacks. As we bring you on, let's start at the quarterback position. What do we know?
Well, we know that everybody at LSU, specifically everybody that works and participates in the LSU football operations building, want everybody to know that the quarterback battle is even. That has been a very clear thing. Everything that comes out of that building from players, coaches, administrators, whoever, it's even between the three quarterbacks, Miles Brennan, Lowell Narcisse, and Justin McMillan. They want everybody to know that it is an even battle. As we all know, Paul, it's probably not necessarily exactly true. I'm sure that, and I think all the three quarterbacks do something better than the other, and Ed Orgeron's made that pretty clear. He's been pretty honest about each of their characteristics on the field. Miles Brennan is a better pocket guy. He's got a more accurate arm. Lowell Narcisse, thicker, big frame guy, can do the zone reads, a good runner, and a powerful arm himself as far as throwing it down the field. And Justin McMillan is that guy that kind of brings, I think, both characteristics of the other two quarterbacks and brings 3 or 4 years of college experience. So you've got a little bit different in each, and I think they're right now when you talk to people who do go to those closed scrimmages, they're kind of using the quarterbacks differently when they're in. So LSU's offense kind of looks different depending on which quarterback is in there.
Ross, do you think any of the three are good enough to lead LSU at least back to a seriously competitive position in the SEC West?
Well, out of high school, obviously Miles Brennan and Lowell Narcisse, they signed with LSU last February, and when they signed, there was a lot of hype that came with them. I mean, they were 4 or 5 star kids. I think each of them were top 10 in their class, ranking wise. Miles Brennan being the top 5 pro style prospect. Lowell Narcisse, I think, was a top 10, dual threat guy. So they've got talent, and they've just got different, as we just talked about, different characteristics of talent. I have no idea if one of those guys could lead LSU to a championship. But I'll tell you this: as you know, Paul, it kind of depends on other people around them as well. And that's the thing this year for LSU is that years past they've had that sturdy, solid, proven running back they can always count on. This year they don't necessarily have that. They've lost Darius Geist, obviously, and Darrell Williams. Then before that, they lost Leonard Fournette, and before that, they lost Jeremy Hill. So they've always kind of had that guy, and now they don't have that kind of proven running back. And when I talked to Ed Orgeron about that, he says it's going to force us to throw the ball. So if you put the pieces together, you get kind of a picture of what LSU's offense might be like. And I think they want to spread the field a little more, throw the ball a little more. And if they're going to do that, as we just talked about, I mean, the one of those three guys we just discussed has a more accurate kind of pocket presence than the others, and that's Myles Brennan, who beat out the other two in last August for the number 2 job. So, you would think he'd maybe a little ahead, but who knows? Because as you know, we don't see a ton of practice, and we don't see any of the scrimmage.
Ross, big story last week, and maybe this was big down there, maybe it wasn't. We made a big deal about it. Was the FPI projections right around the 500 mark? I mean, everyone knows that's not a good number. Does that lower the expectations for Edo this year, and does that help, or do people down there really care? They just want LSU to be competitive.
Well, certainly. I mean, if that gets out nationally to a certain degree, that 6-6 projection, it obviously lowers expectations. I don't know how many LSU fans actually saw that, but it certainly would lower expectations. I don't know what the kind of perception of this season is by a lot of fans, but you got to look at what LSU lost. And I know every team loses people every year. But the Tigers lost arguably, 13, 14 starters overall. I mean, their offense has just lost about 12 significant players, 10 to 12 significant players who either started or played in a key backup role. So I think that's their 2 best running backs they lost. Their starting quarterback they lost. Their 2 top receivers they lost. They lost both of their tackles. Their center. I mean, it just goes on and on. So to expect something huge from an offense that lost so much in a new offense that they're installing I don't think fans necessarily expect that this year. LSU's going to lean on the defense, and I know that's what fans don't want to hear, but this is a defense that I think the front seven is going to be pretty salty. Dave Aranda's in year 3. They've got to lean on that D and hope that D kind of keeps them around in some games so they can win late.
Talking to Ross Dellenger, I want to talk to you about the offense. Certainly Steve Ensminger drew a lot of attention arriving, primarily because of what had taken place before him. You mentioned Myles. You mentioned the lack of that quality, or at least 5-star running back that we're so used to. What is this offense going to look like if we see more passing?
Well, yeah, it depends on who they pick as the starting quarterback. But if you were to go with Myles Brennan, it's very clear what the offense is going to be like, and it'll be that spread 3-4 wide receiver. A lot more passing, a lot of one-back sets. Maybe under center, one-back, 3 receivers, shotgun, 3 or 4 receivers, and it's going to be leaning on that kind of short, intermediate passing game where Myles Brennan thrives. He's really accurate on those throws. He was a record setter, Mississippi quarterback, and he's good with that. So if you're going to go with Myles, it's probably going to be that type of game, play action, a lot of bootleg, getting him out of the pocket. But it's going to be leaning on the pass, I think, more than LSU's offense has in the past. You go with Lowell Narcisse or Justin and McMillan, you're going to probably have more of that zone read. There's going to be a lot more shotgun. It's going to look a little different. But I think a lot of people around here would say that Myles is the favorite. He beat out the other 2 in August. So if you look at what you got in Myles Brennan, you got to play his strengths, and that's throwing the ball, and that's pocket passing. So he's pretty accurate from what I can tell. When you talk to people who do go to those close scrimmages, he's got some zip on those passes. He's pretty accurate on those intermediate shots. So I would expect a lot of people around here have brought up the LA Rams offense, what they did last year, and that's something that LSU is going to go out and visit the Rams, their coaching staff, after the spring. So they're, that kind of offense that they ran over there last season that thrived in the NFL. I think you might see some concepts that LSU is going to pull for that if they do go with Miles Brennan.
Finally, Ross, and these are the hardest questions to answer, but it is April, so why not throw them at you? We talked about the projections. You know this team. You think you know what's going on at practice, or at least you know what you hear. Is there a range you have in mind? Do you think LSU is better than that projection?
The 6-6 projection, yeah,
yes.
That struck me, a little surprising, and not to say LSU's going to go 10-2 or 11-1, but 6-6 is slightly low for a team that I think defensively is pretty seasoned in really talented. I think the front seven, which we all know is so important in the SEC, I think they're going to be pretty salty, and I think they're going to keep them every game. So, 6-6 was a little low. I don't know what I would pick now. I mean, it's so far out to the season opener against Miami, but I'll tell you this: the schedule does LSU no favors. They get the normal SEC West lineup, but then they throw in Georgia this year and throw in Miami at a neutral field.
Always great to catch up, Ross. We will be in touch. Thank you for being with us. So best wishes and talk soon.
All right, thanks, Paul.
Ross Dellenger covers the LSU Tigers. A little bit more upbeat expectation there from him, and that makes sense. We'll take a break. More of your phone calls at 855-242-7285.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
We welcome you back. We're glad to have you, and you can give us a ring at 855-242-7285. Let's move along and check in with man.
Good afternoon, Paul. How's it going?
Excellent.
I was listening to this guy call earlier, and I guess the first hour, and he was talking about Florida baseball, and you aren't kind of fair and that kind of thing. The rules to this show, ladies and gentlemen, are real simple. It's caller-driven. It's your topic. Now, you can immediately turn off the host because your topic is so far out there, but let me give you a clue. If you get real bizarre, your topic gets kind of interesting. And Paul's going to ask you questions. And if he asks you questions, then that's because you are the bizarre of the bizarre, and we're interested. We love crazy stuff. And I think Paul loves crazy stuff better than the rest of us. But it's really just caller-driven. Now, Paul, you was talking about this radio show some of your caller had or something, and you seem to be attacking the industry that you're in, and I understand that. But you also got to understand the people that they are talking about, that particular person. That particular person comes up, and he's warm, and he's charismatic and all those kind of things, but he's a snake in the grass. And he says he's rehabilitated. You think he's rehabilitated. I noticed the thing he said the other day was, that was 20 years ago. Well, for 60 years, I never killed anybody either. And I know a lot of people that never did. So it may be a new record for him, but when does he quit dragging that dead boy around and flaunting him to promote himself? And with this $80,000 a year job, is he paying any restitution? The guy is so self-centered, he's a complete turnoff, and he's a jerk, and when you meet him and you talk to him, he moves in on you. And then before you know it, you can't get rid of him. And then he starts lying and those kind of things, and he tries to be intimidating like his running buddy. But he's got to understand that hood rat stuff don't play in the real world with real people. We're not going to tolerate that, and most people won't, and most people are not scared of it. Now, you said something yesterday about somebody almost coming to blows, and they did. I don't know that you saw that. And
wasn't that you and
K-Dub?
Yeah.
Yeah, if anybody touched anybody, I leaned into K-Dub. K-Dub never touched me.
Okay.
He wouldn't even shake my hand because he felt like I should have done it in front of everybody. And then he goes off with his hood rant, hollering and screaming and pointing and stuff. I never ran from him.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Put a little cherry on the top.
Bring your own guts. This is the best.
Do you hear me?
Of the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
We are back for the second half of the show, and we're glad you're with us. And give us a ring at 855-242-7285. We had Gene Chizik on earlier from Starkville. Ron Dellenger, more guests to come, including one on what's wrong with attendance in college football. Can it be fixed, or is it really a serious problem? Fireball is up next. What do you say? Hey, Fireball.
Hey, what's going on, folks?
We are doing great, thank you.
Ain't nothing on this end. Ain't nothing to it, just like my paycheck.
I like it.
Hey, Paul, I'm just a blue-collar redneck down here in South Alabama. And I'm going to tell you what, 75 or 80% of one, he's selfish and insecure because when you don't agree with him, he's got to start screaming and hollering and calling your name. When it comes to calling the name, that's crossed the line. And
yeah, there was a great call, but we just couldn't make out anything he said. Maybe we can do that again later. Squirrel, I hope your phone is better.
Well, I hope it is too. I'm on my way back from Hattiesburg. If I lose you, I apologize, but just hang up on me. But one thing these callers can do, they like you say, they need to turn off their TV. They need to only go through their telephone and listen through their telephone because it like I said, it's kind of distracting and it throws them off. And when you hear the show in the background, it's distracting to us listeners also. But man, I've just been listening, and it's been a great show so far. And I really enjoyed the anti-gym call from the lady earlier. Then I liked the pro-gym call right back to back. And then you came on and you gave your discussion about going on there and talking to someone and having the issue with Legend come on, and then went scorched earth on us right there with the comments. So like I said, I'm kind of thrown back a little bit. But as I'm listening to your show, I'm thinking at the same time, your guys in the studio, John and Mark, are they in Bristol?
No, they're in the same place I am. John,
they're in
that's
Charlotte?
correct. John,
Okay.
You're in the same city as I am?
Yeah, about an arm's length from Paul right now.
There's been a lot of talk about.
Well, I mean, by the way, they are not in the studio. They are down the hall from me, but they are in the same building. Yes.
Sure. Well, okay. I didn't know if they were in Bristol and you were in Charlotte. I didn't know how it worked out. But there's been a lot of talk about interns lately with the interns that Alabama has gotten, and there's been some issues between John and Legend. That's been kind of well documented. I was just thinking, as a start for Legend yesterday, like I said, why don't you give him a job? Why don't you make him John's intern? You can put him on the payroll. You ain't got to pay him a whole lot, but, it would be a start. And then, like I said, all you got to do is get your foot in the door, and then it's up to that person to work his way up from there. And so that that's just an idea I want to throw out there.
Well, this is a corporation, Squirrel. We'd have to go through an HR background check. I don't know how that would play out. We could do it, and I'm certainly not opposed to having Legend fetch me a cup of coffee, shine my shoes.
The first thing you got to do is have him bring you a cup of coffee.
Yeah, that would be perfect. So, I like it black.
That would be
for the record.
classic. But enough of Legend. And I'm not anti-Legend. I mean, if you go back and look through history, for some reason, Legend started attacking me a few months ago with this, back when he was estranged from the show, when he was making allegations that he was one of the original Saturday Night Live cast members and all of us.
Was he before Aykroyd and after Belushi?
Yeah, he was one of the original guys, and I guess all of us other callers are clowns according to him.
Well, I just think it's unfair that everybody decided to beat up on Legend and Jim.
Well, don't act like they're innocent babes in the woods, Paul. I mean, my God, what you reap, you sow. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I've heard that rumor.
Or something of that nature. So anyway, like I said, I mean, don't act like they're just innocent strangers and we're all of a sudden bullying on these guys. I mean, the reason I got on Jim's radar and he got on my radar years and years ago was because he is a bully and because he is a braggart, and that just rubbed me the wrong way. But I'm not against Jim calling in. You get a lot of calls, ban Jim, and I've never said ban Jim. Because for one reason, I wouldn't be able to call in if Jim was banned. So I'm not banning Jim. I just wish he would not come on here and lie like he does and then get upset when we don't believe his lies. I mean, like, I could ask any one of you guys, did you play on any sports team at any point in your life? And anybody would say, yes, I played on this team during this year, and I did this and that. Jim, he makes all these allegations like he would have been a Cooperstown before 25, but yet you can't pin him down to anything. I mean, and that tells you right there that he's lying, because, again, he can only give so much facts without it being blatant. But it's a great show so far. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you, Squirrel. You've inspired us all.
By the way, I looked up Ted Williams' batting average earlier today.
Hi.
Career.
Hey.
344.
344, wow.
Pretty good.
Nick is next.
Hey, Paul, what's going on today, buddy?
All good, Nick.
Great, Paul. I just want to have a few comments. Of course, I love your show, Paul. God, I love it. Look, talking about these, you had an earlier call today from old Johnny from Orlando saying he was on hold for half an hour to get into your show. You remember that?
I do remember that, yes.
Well, Johnny needs to know that I hold the record for being on hold for the longest. I sent y'all a tweet. Y'all put it up.
How long were you on?
You remember that, Paul? You highlighted my tweet. 3.5 hours.
Congratulations.
Sorry you didn't last long.
I'm a regular caller. So you need to tell, people, don't worry about it. Regular callers get put on hold, too, for a long time. But it ain't no big deal because I love the Finebaum show, and I'm going to wait as long as it takes to get to talk to you. The other thing I want to talk about, you said that, hey, y'all had a production meeting about who calls to take and who not to take. I hope I didn't make the short goal list on that.
No, you're good.
I'm good to go. Bama next, good to go.
You're one of the best. You're one of the best, Nick.
You're good to go, Nick. Good to go right out the window there. Next caller is Jim. Hey, Jim.
I'm sorry, man, but I've had all this I can stand, all of it I won't. I'm going to stop calling your show. But
no, don't do
let me finish, Paul.
Jim, I'll have no one to talk to.
Let me finish, please. Please let me finish.
Okay.
It's because I told you because of the scumbag lying snakes like that guy, that buffoon just now, the squirrel, whoever he is, Ronnie from Mississippi, a total liar, a total jealous punk. Same with iMonkey, who you had to, I guess, cut off the air a while ago. These people are worse than Charles Manson. I don't know if they killed anybody, but they're worse than Charles Manson, in my opinion, as far as their attitude, as far as their low-down ways of lying. He called me a liar, Paul. I've lied about nothing about my career.
Jim.
I got hurt before I could make, the big leagues. I was that good in my. But here I go. If I talk about myself, they'll say he's bragging. I've not lied to you one time about anything I've done, Paul. You've heard people say I could play everything and play it exceptionally well. I didn't get a chance to play college ball. I played high school. I was on the American Legion team when I got injured. I told you all that. But I mean, anybody that played with me or saw me play, that's all I know to say. What else can I say? I didn't get old enough to do 7. I told you I had scouts watching me when I was 16 in baseball. That's all I can say. What else? Where have I lied? I want you to point out where I just want to say he's the liar. I want you to point out where the liar squirrel said I've lied.
I just want to say one thing. Charles Manson,
I want you to point it out. Damn it! I'm sick of this.
Charles Manson killed 9 people.
I don't care. I said an attitude. I didn't say that. I said their attitude is as bad as to me as him. I put him in the same. I put them in the same category. Let me finish.
Okay.
With snakes like him. Because they lie and make up crap about me every day. I'm not a bully, but I can get provoked to hell like that, like just now, about fools like them saying things they say that are wrong. That's all false and garbage. You tell me where I've lied.
I can't find a place where you lied.
Well, all right. I was a genuine player. What is this son of a, what has he done? Where's any proof?
He played high school football.
Man, they've done nothing. They've done nothing in sports that I know of. They've got no history. They're not capable. They're not talented. They're not talented on the radio. All they can do is attack people like me and Legend, who they know are superior to them in every way.
Well, first of all, I think you know how I feel about Legend, okay?
Yeah, I don't know how you feel about me, but you used to say I was, pretty good. Yeah, I've lost my temper in the last 8 or 9 years, Paul, because of scumbag like them, and you promote those whats. You promote them. You open the door for them.
How do I, Jim?
Well, you say, what about, many days you've said to the squirrel, what about Jim? You know it's going to open the door for him to say all the garbage
I didn't.
lies.
I didn't say that tonight.
No, but you've done it all through the years. You've done it. I'm not a fool, Paul. I see and hear what you do. That's why I don't want any part of your show anymore. I'm not going to call anymore because I don't want to associate with those fools. That's why I told you I didn't want to go to any of those parties. I don't want to be around that scum.
That's fair, Jim. That's fair.
But again, I want you to point out to the audience anything that I've lied about, and that fool says I've lied about. I guess he doesn't think I can play ball, never could play ball, never was talented enough to be, whatever. And you asked me my opinion about how well I could hit a baseball. That's all I did was give you my opinion.
Jim, I know. Listen, that was yesterday.
Like Squirrel just brought it up again, and then John Hayes brought it up, mocking about Ted Williams. I've been putting up with it for 10 years. It's all based on a lie. All based on a lie, Paul.
Well,
and I promise you, I'm going to do all I can not to be on this show anymore because I don't need this crap. I don't want it.
Well, Jim, I think you know how I feel.
Doesn't matter how you feel, Paul. It's how I feel now.
Okay.
I'm concerned about my feelings.
Well, listen, I'm not. I don't know what else I can do.
Nothing, but just I want you to tell the audience any way you found that I've lied about Squirrel, that idiot Squirrel, who does not tell me what he does that's constructive on this show. Tell me anything he does except criticize me, belittle me, put me down when he don't know a thing about me. He's lied about me in every way. And same with Legend. We excelled on your show, Paul. You said that. The audience has said that over the years. But what has he done? Criticize me, and that's all he can do. Because he's a hater. He's a damn hater is all he is.
Jim, you know how I feel. I mean, I stood up for Legend today on some ridiculous program.
Well, you haven't stood up for me with that spoof Squirrel. You never have. You always let this eye monkey fool just say anything derogatory and make a joke out of it. That's all you've done is make jokes out of these fools. And they are fools, I'm telling you.
So if you were sitting in my shoes, what would you do, Jim?
Man, I'm glad I'm not. That's all I can tell you. I'm glad I'm not in your shoes. I'm glad I'm not. And the intelligence comparison here is ridiculous in regard to Squirrel and eye monkey. They're both just morons. That's all they can do is criticize because they got no talent, they got no ability, they got no knowledge about anything.
Why don't you leave them behind and call in and talk about things other than them?
Because every damn day I call, they come behind me and trash me for 3 hours, and you let it go on, and you make a big deal out of it. And all the callers believe them. Like Millie today said, "Oh, Paul, he doesn't compare to you. He's talking about me." I mean, everything's a slant insult against me, Paul. So do you think I enjoy that? I mean, this is not rocket science, Paul. You know what's going on here. You think I want to be made a spectacle out of every day when I'm superior to 99% of your people that on the show, especially including the morons that you have over there sitting behind you. That's a fact. People tell me that every day. Why do you call Finebaum and let him do what he does to you?
You're talking about Hayes and...
Yeah, I'm talking about, what I'm talking about. Every day they make some snasty remark about me, which is a lie. I don't know, because I've made them mad because I've called them out. I'm going to call out anybody. I'm not like Trump, Paul. You jump on me, I'm coming back at you double. And that's why they don't. And Squirrel calls me a bully because I do that. I just respond to people. I don't go after them to start with. I just respond back. And he's a stinking low-life fool. That's what he is. I'm telling you. I know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Now, call me a bully if no, I'm not the nicest guy in the world when it comes to scumbags like Squirrel and I-Man. I've got things I can prove I've done. People know what I've done that know me, Paul. They know what talent I've got. You know what talent I've got. I'm not trying to brag, but compare them to me in any way as a caller, as a contributor. Ask Danny Sheridan, ask Mike Rader. Thousands of people that have respected and liked me, and even you in the book. and yet you let these creeps run me off. Same they're going to do with Legend. That's what's wrong with politics, Paul. They're running off the decent people, and you got creeps and snakes replacing them. That's why the damn country's gone to hell.
I agree with you on that part.
You agree with me on most parts, and you know it.
I do.
You just won't admit it.
Well, I just did.
All right, well, that's all I got to say. I guess I'm just sick of this, Paul. I'm sick of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. We're up against a break. Back after this.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Guy is up next in Houston. Houston, we have no problems. Go right ahead.
Hey, Paul. Yeah, I've been listening to this call from Jim and Squirrel. I'm waiting for them to meet outside by the monkey bars and handle this thing like young boys as they seem to be. Your show is about SEC, primarily football.
Usually.
I'm a Georgia Bulldog. I live here in Aggie country. I'm an Aggie fan as well. And I've had the honor of going to Knoxville, Tuscaloosa, Auburn, Arkansas, South Carolina, of course, Florida. SEC stadiums all over the Southeast. And the fans are truly great. But I got to say, Jim, when he insults your staff, you should just click the button and turn him off. And the same for any of the other callers. Squirrel seems to always be pretty reasonable when he calls I-Man and Larry and all these other people, even my own Daryl from Georgia. But Jim, he's just flaming. And I'm surprised you don't just turn him off, although he does add certainly something to talk about.
Yeah, listen, I probably catch more grief on him, and I've stated in the past my feelings on that guy. I appreciate your call, though. I really do. Larry is up next, and you're on the air. Go right ahead, Larry, in Missouri.
Hey, Mr. Finebaum, how you get along today?
Oh, good, Larry. You?
Hey, great. I tell you what, boy, me and my crazy dreams and Ted Williams. I mean, you can't beat them two now. I mean, this show is today is just better than eating a handful of mushrooms. I mean, let me tell you. First, I got to tell you, and now this has been going on for a while, between that Matt guy, I don't know who in the world he is, and Daryl. I mean, this kind of comes back to the national news, where you see these parents locking kids underneath the cellar and chaining them out in the backyard. I mean, when I hear these two old boys, it kind of gives me a little more perspective on the parent side of it. And as far as Teddy, I'm glad he's calling back in because I thought he passed away. I mean, 73, hell, you're on borrowed time. But I will say this, I do appreciate and I really respect his gravitas. But back in Oklahoma, we just call them blue balls. Thanks, Paul Burnson.
Larry is up next.
Paul Finebaum, hey, man. Jim, he touched me, man. That touched me. I'm telling you, I'm serious. And Big Ten John, I want to say something. This call has moved me. Can I say something to you?
Did Larry, did you just say Jim touched you and it moved?
Yeah. Yeah, he moved me, brother.
Larry, I want you to explain that, because I think I know, but I'm not sure everyone else does.
Yeah, he just, when I listen to Jim, all of a sudden, man, I got goosebumps and I got like a movement, Wow, I went, my God.
Like movement in your hands or a bowel movement?
He hasn't felt that way in years.
Not a bowel movement, it could have been. But I was thinking about Mark and Big Ten John. I want to apologize for any erroneous things I have said about y'all. I want to move to that side of the tracks, man, where I just want to apologize, man, for being so mean to y'all. Have you ever heard of how you get that feeling? And Jim he moved it, man. Didn't you feel the earth shake when he started talking?
I felt the earth move under my feet.
Yeah.
I felt the sky.
Big Chin John, you accept my apology?
Absolutely, Larry. How could
I wrong? Yeah.
I have to ask you this, though, Larry. What specifically about Jim's call touched you?
Well, when he was talking about how nobody cares about Jim, and nobody gives him 1 ounce of credit for the things he's done for this show and how he has moved this show from the 0 meter to the off the chart. And now he's right back into being just plain old Jim, right back where he always starts. And now, Paul, what's now? What's next? And when I heard him say that, I said, that's me. That's me. I'm the same kind of way. I'm back to ground zero with Mark and Big Ten John. And I don't listen, I have moved today, brother, and everybody out there. I know there's a lot of callers waiting to call in to say how Jim moved them. I mean, I'm serious. Big Ten John? We cool? We cool? Big Ten.
Capiche.
Are we okay?
Larry, have a great afternoon, brother. We love you.
Yes, sir. I love you, man. I love y'all. Remember that. Tell Mark. No bad. All good, Jack.
I love you too, Larry. We'll take a short break and love everyone else.
We love all y'all, man. I love all y'all.
I love you, Larry.
I love you, man.
I love you more. I love you more. I love you more, Larry.
All y'all.
We'll be right back.
Radio land. Well.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
You're not worth a flail.
Everyone in the neighborhood knew about Bobby. Bobby, the basketball boy, they called him. Bobby wanted to go pro someday, so he was always out in the driveway shooting hoops. But one day, his mom came out and told him,
Hey, your wife wants you to take out the trash?
His mom was visiting, and Bobby was a grown man. He had kind of missed his window. Plus, no one had ever seen him actually make a basket. But on the other hand, Bobby had heard how Geico could save him money on car insurance, so he switched and saved. So it was all good.
Welcome back. We talked with Stuart Mandela the other day about an article by Michael Weinrib in the Athletic about attendance dropping and what's really behind it. Michael has been with us before. A couple of years ago, he joined us talking about his book, Season of Saturdays, A History of College Football in 14 Games. And Michael, hope all is well. Really great to catch up with you again. Good afternoon, if I can figure out how to get you on here. Yeah. There you are. Hey, Michael, okay. Go right ahead. Thanks for being with us.
Sure, no problem.
So we had this long conversation with Stuart about your article, and he talked about how the reaction has just been unbelievable. Take us through the subject, and then I really would like to get to what you heard in the aftermath. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I just read, like you did, I'm sure, about the drop in attendance last year, and it was the largest drop in 34 years. The SEC actually dropped the most of any of the major conferences, which has kind of caught my eye because I thought there's got to be something deeper going on here if SEC attendance is the one that's dropping the most. So then I just wanted to talk to some experts about it and get beyond. So, I think there's a lot of sort of stereotypes and ideas that like millennials don't want to go to games, that they're just all glued to their phones. And I didn't think it was as simple as that. And I still don't think it's as simple as that. So I just wanted to float a couple theories in this story, about the idea of sort of actually attending games and watching them on television, how those two things often work against each other, and just, why people were giving up their seats and why people seemed, that the experience of actually attending games didn't seem to hold the same value to people as it did in the past.
And you mentioned a couple of things there, which I've noticed myself just being on campuses every week. And let's start with students. They seem to be part of the, or not, maybe not part of, a big part of this. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think they're definitely, certainly a part of it. And student attendance has gone down 9% since 2009. So that's something right there. I don't think it's as simple as they just want to be on their phones, and if the Wi-Fi coverage isn't that good, they're not going to show up. There have already been some studies on that people don't stay home because of the Wi-Fi. It's more, I think, for students, I think it's more about the experience of the game itself. And that's what's interesting about this is I grew up going to Penn State games, and, the experience, it's intense. That's what makes college football great, right? Is that the experience of actually going to these games is really intense. But I think it kind of, at this point, maybe scares away certain students who just kind of want it to be more of a social event. And the question is, like, how do you appeal to the one, because the people like us who are crazy about college football are going to go to games regardless. It's the people who are sort of, especially with students, the ones who sort of want it to be more of a social experience are the ones who maybe will just stay at home and watch it on TV.
Michael, beyond students, common sense, and you have the facts, I don't, but would indicate that the length of games, the glut of television have something to do with it. It's just so difficult to again. It's not like just driving down the street. I mean, you got to deal with traffic. You have to deal with all the extraneous issues. Where if you're at home on a Saturday, it's from 11 o'clock until midnight, 13 hours of football, and I'm not even talking about the pregame and postgame shows.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for me, writing about college football, it's easier to be home watching the games. I talked to Stuart Mandel about that, and it's kind of the same thing where it's like it's very often easier to be able to watch all these games rather than sort of go to one. And I think, for me, like I said, I'm a Penn State grad, and I assume this is true for most of the SEC schools where people come from all over the state. So you're driving 3-4 hours each way. Let's say it's an 8 o'clock start, by the time you get home, what is it, like 2-3 in the morning, something like that, So it's either that or maybe it's a noon start, and then you're getting up at 5-6 in the morning. And, if you have, let's say you have kids, and the kids have soccer games or whatever, or Pee-wee football games or something like that. It's like the TV times change constantly. You don't know until maybe 2 weeks before when the kickoff is actually going to be. It's really hard to sort of plan an entire day around all this. It's much easier to just sort of sit on your couch and just flip the remote around.
And Michael, I know you heard from a lot of people because fans talk about this all the time, but not many have really dealt with it out in the open, especially for a publication like yours. But what did you hear in the aftermath?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely. I'm hoping there will be some follow-ups on this because this was one of the most commented articles I think they've had on the site to this point. And there were a lot of things that I didn't have the room to explore at this point. But, length of games is obviously a big one. The idea of like what would happen if, we didn't stop the clock on first downs until maybe the final 2 minutes of each half. Or, what if we didn't stop the clock after an incomplete pass or things like that. And just, how do we maybe there's a better way to integrate commercials into these broadcasts that makes them a little shorter, that can cut off some time that way. So there's a lot of different things to explore here that I didn't even really think about, and it was pretty fascinating and surprising to see the comments on the story. That's the one thing I will say about The Athletic is that it's the one place I've written for where I actually enjoy reading the comment section because people really do have positive and interesting feedback on this stuff. And there are a lot of people who are giving up their seats for various reasons and have ideas as to how the product can be made a little better and streamlined a little better. It's like we all love the sport, but it's definitely suffering from some bloat at this point because of TV.
And listen, whether it's television ratings, whether it's anything else, it seems like when things start declining, Michael, they don't come back. Is there concern that this is an irreversible trend?
There should be, I think. I mean, I think, the main thing that one of the experts I spoke to told me was, these schools need to not just guess why fans aren't coming. They need to ask these fans why they're not coming. They need to get more data and study this a lot more. I mean, I think there's still this great love for college football, but, I think you have to balance what the traditionalists kind of want and this atmosphere that they expect and the intensity of it with this idea of like, there are going to be a lot of people who sort of want more of an experience of it. I mentioned like Mississippi State building those luxury cabanas that, have televisions and food and shade, and they don't actually have a direct view of the field, I guess, but, they sold out in like 48 hours because people sort of wanted that experience. I mean, that's sort of an extreme example, but I think there are other examples of like teams being able to do something like that where it will feel more like a social experience for certain people who are maybe more casual college football fans.
Yeah, it could be maybe better games on the schedule too, because I know that came up.
That's true too. Yeah, I mean, you look at like my parents gave up their Penn State season tickets after 40 years, and one reason was like, you know, why do we want to go see them play Akron and you know, all these like third-tier teams early in the year? It's like we can just pick up a ticket for those if we want to go at the last minute, and it's not worth it to pay that much money to see a lot of these crappy early season games, or, you know, the SEC always has that 1 week during the year when everybody sort of plays a lousy team, you know? And it's like, why do I want to pay all this extra money to go to these games? And maybe there's two home games a year that are going to be the ones that I really want to go to.
Yeah, just for the record, Michael, I know you're an honest journalist. We bleeped out that thing you just said about the SEC.
Oh, sorry. That's right. I forgot what network I was talking about.
Listen, I think this is a fascinating topic. We're a long way from being done with it. I hope you'll come back. We really would maybe one day actually have you on and get some people reacting to it, because I think it's a fantastic subject.
Definitely. I'd love to hear from people for sure.
Great to have you. Michael, come back soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Great subject. That is really a good idea, John, to maybe open this up for an hour and get people to because I think it's a legitimate problem. And he listed a lot of the problems. Time, you're a Penn State grad, you know, some of these games are just not worth going to. And I know fans say, "Oh, I'll go to any game," but when you hit that weekend when there is so much going on, you have to think twice about it.
Yeah, and the good news is the forum's open now. I mean, we've still got 5 segments to go. So, and we just put the question on Twitter, Paul. Are you more or less inclined to go to a game in 2018 than you were in the past? Think about yourself in 2008. 10 years later, are you going to go to the game this fall? Or are you going to sit home on your couch and watch on TV?
It's a subject we'll be having today and throughout the spring. More of your phone calls when we come back.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Welcome back. Really good conversation there. That was fascinating, I thought. Let's get some reaction. And Rob is up next in Florida. Hey, Rob.
Hey, Mr. Paul. How you doing?
We're doing great. Thank you for calling.
All right, thank you for having me. First-time caller. I got through on the first time.
That is fantastic.
Yes, sir. About the subject, I absolutely am more inclined to go this year. I'm down in Pensacola now. I'm in the Navy, and I'm a huge Georgia fan. And after the past few years we've had coming up with Kirby, I'm definitely making it to some games, and I'm actually going to the G-Day game on the 21st.
Well, you know, I think that's what happens when schools do well. There is a higher level of enthusiasm. But so I think what you're saying is more because your team is doing well as opposed to some of the other issues, though.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. What I've noticed is in the SEC, at least, on the bigger schools. I mean, look at Tennessee this year. I mean, they had a horrible year, but yet, I mean, there were still the Georgia game, they were sold out. So,
well, but hey, hold on a second. I mean, the Georgia game was before the fall. That was at the end of that day, things really did change dramatically. Hey, thank you very much for the call. Kevin is up next in Atlanta. Hello, Kevin.
Hello, Paul. Good afternoon. I hope you're doing well.
I am. Thank you.
Listen, Paul, I just want to put a little perspective. I mean, I've been listening to you before you were on radio. I mean, back in the day in Birmingham when you used to write your article on the cave wall and then pass the torch so the next guy could start reading it and he would pass it so we could read it.
Absolutely.
So I want to bring a little perspective on Jim. I don't want to ban Jim. I don't want any of this stuff. I've said this before. I just want Jim to be Jim of old. I don't know if it's since they got the Wi-Fi at Bryce that he's got more time for Twitter and Facebook and he's distracted. But we all know that
for those who don't know the connection, player. Bryce is the state mental institution in Tuscaloosa.
We all know Jim was the high school player, the greatest high school player ever. I mean, that was the best 8 years of his life. I mean, it really was. So when you pad the stats like that, and double the amount of time, they look good. But, I just want him to be the Jim of old. I mean, you probably saw the last fight with Manny Pacquiao. I mean, that wasn't Manny Pacquiao. That was some guy that looked like him.
Yeah, and by the way, I've tried to encourage him, but, I think sometimes, and I don't know what the phrase is or what the actual word is, but you just have to quit listening to the criticism.
He's just got to go back to the way he was. So,
and I mean this sincerely, Kevin. 10 years ago, Jim would pick a subject, dive in, blow it up, and it was compelling.
He was, and he was a hook for the show. People listened, whether you agreed with him or not. You would listen and pay attention to what he was saying. And now it's like he's the drive-by headline news of I'm going to give these tidbits of why I don't like this, why I don't like that, but I'm not really going to bring you any substance. I'm just.
Well, we are going to make this show great again. One more hour to go.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Put a little cherry on the top.
Bring your own guts. This is the best
Do you hear me?
of the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Welcome back. Final hour has arrived. A lot of conversation about Michael Weinrib was with us talking about attendance dropping in college football. Let's continue that conversation. Ken is in Nashville. Ken, how are you?
Hey, Paul. Good to talk to you.
Oh, wonderful.
You know, I'm a subscriber to The Athletic, and I read that column, that article he wrote, and really liked it. I thought it was so cool that you had him on the air. And like he said, whatever the answer is.
By the way, John and I have been thinking about subscribing. Is it worth it?
Oh, it's definitely worth it, Paul. There's a caliber of writing there that I think you would appreciate because of your journalistic history. And as Michael said, you read the comments. I almost always read the comments on the articles that interest me. And maybe you agree with a person and maybe you don't. But it just seems like there is a caliber of commentary that you don't get these days. You know what I mean?
I hear you. Oh, listen, I promise you.
Compared to Twitter.
I know what you're talking about.
Right. All right, so here's what I think is one of the factors, though, and this may seem a stretch at first. I want to connect it to Donald Trump without making a political statement.
Okay.
If you look at before Trump's election, some of the major media outlets that were really suffering were like the New York Times, the Washington Post, MSNBC. They just weren't doing well. They're doing great now. And one of the things about Trump that people may or may not recognize is that whether you love the guy or hate the guy, increasingly what you see in him is he is what he is, right? And he makes no bones about it. And it seems like more and more these days, people hunger for some authenticity, for some genuineness, whether they all like you or not. They like to just kind of know who you are, what you are. And I think that's the history of college football. Football is this very emotional sport. I think what makes it different, there's a lot of things. One of the things, they only play every Saturday in college. And so you get this rhythm to the emotion. You get the big rhythm on Saturday. Then the big letdown if you lost on Sunday, or the wallowing in the excitement. And then Monday you realize, we got so-and-so coming up next Saturday. And now the fans and the team getting their game faces back on. It starts ramping back up, and here comes Saturday again. And I think the introduction of replay, certainly the time is a factor, but the introduction of replay has replaced emotion with mechanics. And I can remember, I grew up in the old Big 8 territory, Paul. I'm a St. Louis native. I spent the bulk of my career in Big 10 territory up in Illinois, and now I live in Nashville, SEC territory. But when I think back over things that I remember of teams I was crazy about, a lot of what's burned in my head is these crazy officials calls that either I thought went against my team, whatever. And now, in the heat of that emotion, it's almost like coitus interruptus. Here comes 5 guys crowded around a camera for what seems a ridiculous amount of time, and it just takes people right out of it. And I think it's happening in every sport. And I think that these leaders of sports are so stupid and short-sighted. And, of course, they're driven by coaches who feel like their job depends on every little single call. But, one of the beauties of sport is that players aren't perfect, and coaches aren't perfect, and referees and umpires aren't perfect, and fans aren't perfect in our interpretations of events. And that's what lets us come on your show Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and talk about all that stuff. And they have this zeal in them, this misguided belief that they could somehow make it perfection. We can make every call exactly right. We can rectify every error. No, you can't. And who says that we want you to? And in the meantime, they drag the game out, but I think more importantly, they steal from us what is some of the very stuff that attracts us to the sport. And yes, we go crazy negative over, like Daryl from Georgia can't get over, some of the calls in the game. All right, I get that. But you know what? That's what keeps Daryl going. For every bit that Daryl hates it, that's what drives Daryl. And instead, if we get an extra 30 minutes a game of watching that stuff when these guys huddle around a camera, you know what we do? We just leave because we have options. We got another game we can flip to if we're at home, and that's what I do. Or we got, friends we can talk to, or we got Twitter we can go on and see what's going on. And you've lost us, and now you got to get us back, and that just doesn't work. And so that's my opinion. They are replacing emotion with mechanics, and they better understand that they're in some ways sucking the lifeblood out of the experience of that fan who paid $1 bazillion to sit in that stadium that day.
Wow, what a great call. Ken, thank you so very much.
All right, thanks, Paul.
What a great analysis. Rich is up next.
Jack.
How are you,
Jack,
Rich? What's happening? I can. What's happening?
Hey, buddy, can you do me a favor? I didn't get a raise this year. Can you make a call for me to my boss? Kind of help me out.
I just texted him. He blocked me.
Hey, I think that was very nice of you to do that. Hey, and before I get to that, I think that the answer to the attendance issue is very, very simple. Just drop the win plateau from 6 games for these bowls, and everything changes. The bowls are still the economic driver of college football. It's the measuring stick. It's everything. All you got to do is drop it from 6 wins, and everything changes. Why will they not do that?
It's a fair point because you're just trying to pad the resume.
Right, of course. But anyway, okay, real quick. Are you concerned about the divisive tone of the show at times?
Well, yeah, I mean, in a way, but I don't dwell on it too much.
Yeah, but I mean, these two guys. I mean, obviously, you know who the two most divisive guys are, and that's Legend and Jim. And an example with Legend is I just feel that this guy violates every tenet of Alabama's program, the biggest one being respect the opponent. Now, you've been saying since National Signing Day that Tuscaloosa is absolutely positively concerned about what's going on in Athens. And I can tell you that you've never been more right in a statement. This guy comes on right after you say that, and you've been saying it since February, and he starts calling UGA the Buffalo Bills and all. And it's just like, and I'm just thinking to myself, look, I understand the smack talk. I understand the the showbiz side of it, but this guy doesn't represent anyone but the lunatic fringe. That's what he represents. I mean, and I just don't understand how a guy like that continues to just, I don't know, and I like him. I'm not saying I don't like him calling. I think that's fine. I know he's been with you since day one and all that, but he doesn't represent Alabama. He represents a faction, a lunatic fringe of the Alabama fan base. And, and I thought it was awful nice of you, like I said, for you to call and try to get him back on the show and everything else. I think that's great. But as far as this guy having any validity to anyone that really knows anything, not in my book.
Thanks for the call.
So what do you think, Jack?
Well, listen, I don't know. I mean, I think I've said what I had to say about him, and I try to look at everything broadly. I don't know if he's a sidewalk alum. I don't think he cares whether he represents the university or not. He's a fan. Kevin is up next. Kevin?
He was talking about Legend, right?
That is correct.
My only problem with Legend is he comes on here and promotes I mean, not on purpose, but he promotes and you promote alcohol, you know, and the last thing society needs is more alcoholics, you know,
Kevin,
and bragging about drinking X amount of beers and all this.
Hey, hold on,
Cool.
hold on a second. I don't promote alcohol. If people want to drink, that's their own business. I don't tell. By the way, Kevin, I don't tell anyone on this show what they should do with their lives. That's not my That's not my problem. That's not my purpose.
Asking somebody how many alcoholic beverages they've had is not funny to me.
Well,
you know what I mean? I don't care.
Well, you know what?
I don't care how
you know
much
what,
he's
Kevin?
had,
That's your concern. But the guy that we're talking about is not Legend. It's Larry. He calls in and jokes about how many beers he has, so it's become a running gag. You know, some people actually like to have fun in their lives, Kevin. They don't spend their entire existence worried about the Illuminati taking over the world.
If sitting around and having 24 beers a day is fun, then, you know, that's not what I call fun.
Kevin, what do you do for fun?
Well, what I do for fun is I go out in the woods and ride four-wheelers, and I work out, and I eat, and I work. That's what I do for fun. I go out on my boats and stuff.
That's great.
What do you do for fun, Paul? You write? You sit there and you write? What do you do for fun?
I do the show for fun. That's what I do.
You pet your dog for fun? I mean, what do you do for fun?
No,
Paul?
I pet my dog because he needs the affection.
What do you do for fun, Paul?
I just got through telling you, Kevin. This 4 hours every day is the most fun I have in my life.
Well, I could see how. You know, you get to talk to people like me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a pretty fun guy, believe it or not.
Well, you just asked me. I mean, what if you had to pick your perfect fun weekend? What would it be?
Oh man, I'm a Sagittarius, Paul. I can do anything.
You can't even answer the question. Is what you can't do.
Anything in the world.
I don't think I put any stipulations on the question, Kevin.
I guess I'd go to an exotic island and I'd fly over it, right? And then I get parachuted out onto this exotic island. There'd be a whole bunch of women there. Be all my concubines for the weekend.
Are you married, Kevin?
What's that have to do with anything? I want concubines, Paul, and I want my own island. I want to be parachuted into it for the weekend.
No, I just asked you. I mean, by the way, asking someone whether they're married or not is not exactly a trick question.
Is there going to be steak and potatoes on this island too? And any of these women cook for me?
That sounds a little bit misogynistic to me. So why don't we just move on to somebody more normal? How about Doogie next? How are you, Doogie?
Doing great, Paul. I've been a long-time listener since the early 2000s.
Wow.
Really enjoy your show.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, I just had a comment on attendance, specifically the SEC. And, you know, as I look back over the 2017 season, there were just a lot of bad teams in the SEC, including some major powerhouses like Florida and Tennessee. And I know those stadiums weren't as full. And I think that has a lot to do locally in the SEC. Can't speak for the rest of the country, but that had a big impact.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I think things change, and it somewhat depends on really where you are, Doogie. Listen, thank you very much. I appreciate the call. We're up against a break here. We have more to deal with in the final 45 minutes, including your phone calls at 855-242-7285.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Welcome back. What a show. What a day. Perfect song. Sweet Home Alabama to go to the next contestant. Legend is on the air.
Sweet Home Alabama, baby. Stand up with me, Alabama fans. Salute the flag, baby. Woo! Ronnie Van Zant, Paul. Don't get no better than Lund Skinner, baby.
Not at all.
Nobody said.
What's going on, Legend? What is going on?
Well, Paul, I just want to thank you so much for what you did for me this morning. I mean, I was blown away. You know, it was like having Johnny Cochran on your side.
Well, first of all, I did it because it was the right thing to do. But I will say I was fairly turned off by the host of the show.
Well, Matt Murphy, I went on later with him. He did give me more time to talk than he gave you, Paul. And I did let him know when you got Paul Finebaum on there, you just need to hush up and let Paul.
Well, listen, I'm not gonna criticize another talk show host because he's a huge success, and I try to study his talent to maybe better myself one day, but I won't be back.
Oh, okay, Paul. Well, he made a good point, to me. He was kind to me. He made a good point. I appreciate it. The fact that, when you're on Twitter, the last person you want to go after is the head of the radio show that you're on.
Well, I mean, listen, I'll tell you something, Legend. If you came after me, I would roll with the punches because it comes with the territory. If you're going to be a host of a show and you can't take somebody criticizing you, then you ought to find something else to do.
Well, the good news is, Paul, the announcement. Drum roll, please. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Legend's back, ladies and gentlemen.
Legend is back?
The great Paul Finebaum.
Oh, my goodness.
Legend is back, baby. Legend is back.
So tell us the story. What happened?
I'm Paul, but I will be on the show.
Then all the aggravation was worth it then.
Yeah, it was, Paul. Yeah, it was. And I have a confession, Paul. I have an addiction. Twitter. It's a problem, Paul.
Well, no. By the way, Legend, if I had the time, I would have a help clinic for Twitter addicts, and I would be a billionaire.
I'm telling you, they tried to send me to rehab, but I said no. I mean, Paul, I'll be up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm on Twitter underneath the cover. My baby wakes up and says, "What the hell are you doing?" I'm on Twitter. I mean, I go to the bathroom at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm tweeting. I got a problem, Paul. I need help. And I got a problem, dude. I got a real problem.
Well, you're talking to John Hayes can relate to that problem.
Literally, Legend, I was just going to say, you and we can relate on that as much as anything.
Oh, yeah, because I got nothing against John, but on Twitter, I was ready to take him out to the woodshed, and he was taking me out to the woodshed. I mean, I like John, but on Twitter, I mean, it's like I turn into Spider-Man with the black mask on or something, I mean, I got a problem, Paul, but...
Legend, listen, I want to give Jim from Tuscaloosa some credit, too. He was
absolutely.
He was standing tall for you.
Absolutely. I totally disagree with the earlier caller. Anytime I turn on your show, Paul, they are talking about Jim. I mean, if you love him, hate him, I mean, the dude's a Hall of Fame caller. I mean, I could turn on your show at 3, 4, 5, and a caller's telling you something about Jim. I mean, that's proof in the pudding. He brings an opinion, Paul. If you like it, if you don't like it, it's better to just have it 3 questions. That's what the show's all about. But you're a superstar, dude. You are a champion of the people, dude. I mean, what you did for me today, I'll never forget. You love your callers, and you stood up for the fan today. And for that guy that said, I speak for the University of Alabama, I've never said that. I met Nick Saban in person. He told me, "Hey, Legend, I know who you are. You need to chill out." So, I don't speak for the University of Alabama, but I do speak for the average Joe out there on the street that realized the difference between reality and sports and can let his hair down, have a beer on a Saturday, and shout for his team and get crazy. We don't poison trees. We're not trying to stab somebody. We just freaking crazy about the greatest college football team of all time. You're a superstar, dude. I appreciate you so much what you did today.
Hey, thank you very much. I'm thrilled to hear the news, Legend. That is great to hear.
Thank you, sir.
You got it.
And for everybody else, you know it. Kiss the ring.
How about Patrick in Tennessee? You're on the air. Go right ahead. Hey, Patrick. What's up?
Well, I was going to talk a little bit Tennessee basketball, Tennessee football, of course. Then I started thinking I might want to talk about Jim. And then you got me thinking about talking about attendance. As far as, I can only speak, for myself as Tennessee fan. Last year, didn't attend any games. This year, attended one, stayed for about a quarter, and left. And something I've never done in my life. I've always been one of those that, go to every home game at least, if not, and at least a couple of away games every year. And stay to the end, whether we're getting beat 50-0 or winning 50-0. And I think what's happened with a lot of Tennessee fans is we have battered wife syndrome.
What is that? I mean, I know what that is, but how does that relate to Tennessee football?
Just, we keep getting beat down and beat down and beat down, and I'm not talking about getting beat down by our opponents. That just comes with the territory sometimes. Can't win them all, but you get beat down by the administration, by the coaches. You get let down and let down and let down, and you just get to the point to where you kind of accept it, and eventually, of course, the ultimate goal, if you're a battered woman, is to get away from the person that's battering you. And I know for me, I just couldn't handle it anymore. I couldn't handle, just the heartbreak and being upset all the time and everything over just, how poor things are ran at the University of Tennessee. And so I just stopped spending all the money on going to the games.
Well, listen, do whatever you want, but I think things are getting better there. I really do.
Oh, well, I do too. There's no question about that. We talked about that last week when I called in, but I do think things are getting better. I'm just, just looking at it from the last, let's say 10 years. It's been going on for a long time where things have just been so mismanaged from the top down that fans are finally just getting put up, getting tired of it, and they're just stopping coming to the games. I mean, you look at prices for tickets, concessions, and everything else stays the same or goes up, yet the quality of the product that they're putting out for us is getting worse. And I think Tennessee fans have just
but I think that's also one reason why Tennessee has a new football coach and a new athletic director. Listen, I appreciate your thoughts. We have to run up against a break. More of your phone calls, the final 30 minutes, and you can join us now at 855-242-7285.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
You're not worth a flip.
Everyone in the neighborhood knew about Bobby. Bobby, the basketball boy, they called him. Bobby wanted to go pro someday, so he was always out in the driveway shooting hoops. But one day, his mom came out and told him,
Hey, your wife wants you to take out the trash?
His mom was visiting, and Bobby was a grown man. He had kind of missed his window. Plus, no one had ever seen him actually make a basket. But on the other hand, Bobby had heard how Geico could save him money on car insurance, so he switched and saved. So it was all good.
We welcome you back. Let's continue with some great calls tonight. Todd is in Kentucky. Hello, Todd. Todd, you there?
Yeah.
Go right ahead. Yes, we can. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I just wanted to chime in on the attendance issue, or issue, I guess you'd call it, or what's going on with the attendance.
Yeah.
Me personally, I'm 37 years old. I got a 5-year-old son. I really don't want to take him to a stadium, but a crowd full of people, would have to shuffle in, shuffle out, fight the traffic. I'm not a spring chicken anymore. As far as you're going to spend the whole day.
No, it's I don't blame you, Jeff.
Todd, but that's close enough, Jeff. Whatever
Todd,
you want to call there, Paul.
I'm sorry, Todd.
That's okay.
I'll call you Todd. You call me Jeff. But you're right. I'm on these campuses every week too, but I'm getting there at 5:45 in the morning and there's no traffic.
Sure.
And I'm usually leaving against the grain, and it's still complicated, but I see what you're talking about, and I'm all for fans getting there and having a good time. That's what this industry is about. But if you have kids, if you have a life, and you don't want to invest 12 hours on Saturday, then you have to make a different choice.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And another thing, the quality of games How many ranked opponents did Alabama play last year, Paul?
At the end, not very many. Yeah, and listen, I don't want to pick on any school in particular, but I don't want to watch Alabama and Mercer. I don't want to watch Alabama and the Citadel this year. And I'm sure the Citadel fan will call in and say, well, we beat South Carolina. I don't really care. I still don't want to. I actually went to that game. I worked that game 2 years ago, and it was miserable to watch.
Paul, let me go through Arkansas's schedule for you next year. And you put yourself as an Arkansas fan. You're a big Hog fan. And are you going to go to these games? Todd, I want you to weigh in too. Okay, you're going to start out with Eastern Illinois at home.
Not going.
Oh, boy. No, thank you.
North Texas, 2 weeks later.
They're a little better. Still don't want to go.
I'd rather take a nap.
Okay, finally we've gotten to October 6th, and Alabama's in town. Hottest ticket. That's a game everybody's going to.
Give me a ticket, please.
Absolutely.
Sure.
2 weeks later,
we're already to October 20th, and the Tulsa Golden Hurricane stumble into Fayetteville.
I'll suffer through that game.
Vandy. Yeah. Vandy the week after.
I'd rather watch it on the tube.
And then you've got LSU.
Okay.
Everyone wants to go to that game.
But I bet if you go to another schedule, it won't be much different. Because,
it won't.
And listen, I think the industry is hurting itself by these games, and we've heard it a couple of times already. And that's really good. Hey, listen, thank you very much for the call. I do appreciate it. Greg, you're on the air. Go right ahead.
Thanks for taking my call, Paul. It's an interesting subject, and playing off what the last caller said, I think a lot of times it depends on your age and where you are in life. When I went and saw, Bear Bryant's last Iron Bowl and the one right after that, I was in my early 20s, and it's a different experience than when you're 55 and going.
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah, so being an Alabama fan, I don't want to go see Mercer. I'll go see Mississippi State.
Well, sure.
If we have them at home, or Ole Miss or those games. The bigger games are harder to get into, and, unless you're on the season ticket holder list, it's harder to get into the marquee games unless you want to shell out the big bucks and go see the SEC championship or in the playoffs. If you can afford to do that, that's great. But the bigger games, I just want to see at home where I don't have 20 different things going on in the stadium. I go to a football stadium to watch the game. I don't care about who's going to do the halftime show or what's going on at the Concourse B area of a stadium. I worked in the amusement park industry for a while. I've seen all that. When I go to a ball game, I want to be immersed in the ball game culture. It was, Legion Field's a ratty stadium, but back in the day when Alabama Auburn played there, it was wonderful. It was electric. And it's hard to duplicate in a lot of these games.
No. Listen, it's a changing world, and Greg, if you go back to when you were in your 20s and I was, you didn't have many games to choose from. So you may have had one game on that afternoon, and now it's seemingly endless the number of games you can watch, and the choice of going to a really bad game that you have to spend a lot of money for versus staying home and watching a collection of incredibly good games, it's not worth it.
Exactly. Now I want to switch topics here real quick. I appreciate what you have brought to TV and radio with your show. And one of the things that draws me to it are not only the guests, but also the callers that want to have a conversation with you. Because even if you disagree at the end of your conversation, if you don't have the ability or the desire to hear what the other person is saying, how can you get anywhere? How can you fix anything? So if you hate someone because of their opinion, you've got a really sad life. You don't have to like each other. You don't have to agree with what the other is saying. But if you can't talk to each other, then what's the point? I've got too much positive things going on in my personal life to hold grudges against people or to hate people, regardless of what they may say or do about me. It doesn't matter. I get up every day and do what I want to do the things I like to do, and do the things I have to do, like we all should. And so being able to listen to you and John and Mark and Randy and Brams and the guests you have and the callers who offer some opinions, I don't agree with a lot of them, but I enjoy getting to hear other perspectives because that's how you grow as an individual. And if you can't love people,
you said something, Greg, and you understand this being in military, but I think sometimes you have to almost force yourself to listen to some other opinion, because those people who only watch or listen to the opinions that they like or the political views are really not growing very much. I'm not saying you have to subject yourself to propaganda, but I think you ought to sit there and listen to why do you think that is the case without interrupting too.
You're right. I mean, there's a lot that Cornel West, I'm sure you know who he is.
Oh, of course.
Right. He and I may not agree on a lot of things. We might agree on some things and disagree on how we get there. But that's someone I could sit down with and have lunch with or dinner with and talk about things because that's the only way you're going to get from where you are to where you want to be. And I think your show does that. And for those who don't like it, you have freedom of choice. And so I look forward to the continued conversations. I enjoy getting to talk to you when I can. And it means a lot to me to be able to listen to other Finebaum callers share their desires and their hopes and frustrations about their sports teams and things that are going on, because you offer that venue and you listen to what people have to say, in spite of all the knuckleheads that we get, but that's in everyday life, so you can't stop that. But it's just a joy to get to, at the end of my day, to turn on the radio or drive down the road, or if I've DVR'd the episode, to listen to it later to see what I missed, because it's informational, it's entertaining, and it's just nice to be able to do.
Well done. Thank you, Greg. Talk soon.
Thank you.
A few minutes to go on our program. Don't forget, Minka Fitzpatrick will be with us tomorrow. We are coming right back.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
Jeff is calling next. What do you say, Jeff?
Hey, Paul. How you doing?
We are doing great. Thank you very much for calling.
Great. Listen, just wanted to comment on the attendance. Besides playing golf at Tuscaloosa Country Club on Saturday,
how are the greens rolling?
Oh, no, they're great. But no, in all seriousness, I still go to a lot of Alabama games, and the Wi-Fi and the phone reception is horrible. And I remember the world before cell phones, but it's kind of like we've had this world with it. And I think people just don't like feeling that disconnected, because then when the game's over, you get 800 text messages.
Yeah,
And
I can't believe it's still that bad. That's amazing.
Yeah, Greg Byrne recently put out a survey for Alabama people that go to games like myself to say what's wrong, and that's the only answer I put on every question, but I just wonder if that's a big thing, especially with younger people. So,
well, yeah, I mean, listen, I'll never forget being at the Alabama-Texas A&M game when Manziel, I think Alabama was up 21-0 or something, and I was trying to text somebody in the and I couldn't, my cell phone wouldn't work. And finally, about an hour later, all the reactions started coming in, but that was in 2012.
And this could turn into a real serious discussion about psychology when it comes to millennials, Paul, because you hit the nail on the head, Jeff. The idea of feeling disconnected.
Yeah.
Everyone has their phone within 3 feet of them at all times in 2018. And if you can't use it to contact someone immediately, anxiety happens fast.
Exactly. Someone asked me today, so I can't believe I texted you and you reacted like, where do you think my phone is? In my locker? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
So anyway, thanks, guys. Good show. Y'all have a good one, okay?
Great to hear from you. We go to K-Dub next.
Young Bees, how you doing, my brother?
K-Dub, what's happening?
I can't complain too tough, man. I just want to set this up by saying, I've been to every single Alabama home game since 2010. I'm talking about the Mercers, the Colorado States, every last one of them. I've been to every single home game.
You're a fan.
And my whole thing is, you can come up with all these reasons why people are not going or coming or whatnot, but it boils down to one thing. It's a want to. You're going to have to want to go to these games. If you don't want to go, if you have other things you want to do on your Saturdays besides think about Alabama football or whoever football you follow, then maybe, going to the game is not for you. But this is what I do on Saturdays. I want to go, so that's what I do. It's a want to thing. And I think y'all guys touched on it a little bit with the millennials and stuff like that. It's a lot of other things going on for them. They're not that kind of fan yet. They're just the kind of fan I chose to be. I wanted to be every game. That's what I wanted to do. So it's a want to thing. And do you kind of agree with that? What I'm trying to get at on that point?
Yeah, I mean, John, you're more of a fan than I am. If you were in Philly right now, would you go to Penn State games every weekend?
No, because it's 3 hours away. How far do you travel, K-Dub, to go to Tuscaloosa on a Saturday?
Only about 45 minutes. It'll only take me about 30 minutes, 45 minutes to get there.
That's different than a lot of people who have to travel to these campuses that are pretty far from the nearest big-time city.
I agree with that. And then another thing, if you're doing what I'm doing, tailgating has taken on a whole nother life. It's not pulling up with, popping the back of your tailgate down and having a couple of sandwiches. It's a big production now. It's TVs, it's DJs, it's big tents, it's big lights now, you know what I'm saying? So, you're going to have to want to do this stuff. Either you're going to want to do it or you're not going to want to do it. That's what I think it really boils down to. Go all these statistics and talking about this, that, and the other is just, you got to find those fans who want to do this and who want to be there. I know they would never do this, but just think about this. Just think about if the Eyeball went on TV. Just think how many people be trying to get at these games or things like that. TV has spoiled us to where we can see everything on TV now. Now, if you put the Ole Miss game and just say, okay, this game is going to be on TV this week, those fans, that stadium's going to be packed of people just trying to see, what the outcome of the game is. But I think, TV has spoiled us, but they would never do that. Of course, I know that all the games will be televised, but I think that's another thing. TV has spoiled us to the point that we really don't want to go to. So I appreciate it. Appreciate you letting me come on, Bees, and you have a blessed day, man.
Thank you so very much. And John, that was a big topic tonight. I think we need to
it's a good topic.
Keep this going.
Yeah, we've got all off season, and I'd like to hear from different fans from across the country. Not only just SEC fans in general. The home and home discussion comes into play, Paul. The TV discussion comes into play. But I'll say this: if K-Dub can get the girls down to the tailgate on a Saturday afternoon, I'll be there, even if I have to get on a plane.
We are done. It has been a fun night. We thank all of you for being a part. Minka Fitzpatrick among our guests tomorrow. We'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast. The Paul Finebaum Show airs weekdays on the SEC Network beginning at 3 Eastern.